Chapter 22-21, Sudden Change. An overwhelming inferno of rage surged in the Soul Emperor's heart. He hated Lin Ming, hated Xiang Mei, hated Immortal Sovereign. Even with that last strike he had still failed, and now it would be incredibly difficult to kill Lin Ming. Lin Ming's life force had reached unbelievable heights. His 9 stars of the Dao Palace were open to the 8th Dao Palace, his acupoints and meridians were thoroughly connected and linked, and with him having swallowed a totem-level abyssal and dual cultivating divinity and demons, as well as comprehending 2 of the highest laws, whether it was his body, inner world, or divine soul, they had reached mind-boggling levels. Everyone knew that Lin Ming had contributed the most strength to this battle. He had consumed the most blood vitality and had fought for the longest time. And as the fight continued on, Lin Ming still had strength left. Rather, it was more accurate to say that Lin Ming had already overdrawn his strength, but his powerful mortal body allowed him to recover some energy in a short period of time. As for Clear and Ink, they had already returned to their old and wizened appearance and their strength had precipitously weakened, they might have even dropped boundaries. As for Xiang Mei, her spiritual sea had split open and her consciousness was blurred, she had lost any power to resist. The Soul Emperor gripped his fists. With his face torn open by the black flames from within, he looked fierce and hideous. With the near collapse of the Emperor Bone Sea, he no longer dared to transfer any of his own strength. But at this time, from far off in the void, rainbow-hued energy beams soared towards him. This was an energy attack condensed from a multitude of laws. What? Feeling this energy hurtle towards him, the Soul Emperor glanced over. He saw that the many human Empyreans had gathered into an array formation under Emperor Sakya's leadership and had actually attacked him. Just a bunch of ants that have no idea of death or danger. The Soul Emperor fumed. In his most glorious state, Empyrean-level attacks were no different from scratching an itch. With a thought, he could have tuned all these Empyreans into ashes. But now, after being severely wounded and facing a situation in which the Emperor Bone Sea had almost collapsed, the great attack formed from the human Empyreans was now actually a threat to him. If the chain reaction of energy were to rush into the world of the demon god's tomb, then it might become the final straw that broke the camel's back and caused the Emperor Bone Sea to utterly collapse. All of you, remember me, the Soul Emperor said, so angry his eyes nearly popped out of his head. He grabbed the bone staff and poured in energy one more time before firing it towards Lin Ming. Hum! The bone staff was like a meteor that contained the world strength of the demon god's tomb. It pierced through the energy wave sent out by the numerous Empyreans and thrust towards Lin Ming's chest. Protect Lin Ming! Emperor Sakya roared out. Many Empyreans immediately shifted their target. For a time, all sorts of different weapons and law lights shot towards the bone staff shot out by the Soul Emperor. If there were enough ants, even an elephant could be bitten to death. Moreover, the bone staff shot out by the Soul Emperor didn't have much strength behind it to begin with. In the mighty waves of energy, the bone staff was like a fish caught in a swamp, rapidly forced to a slow crawl. But at this time, the Soul Emperor had turned around and was rapidly flying towards Xiang Mei. Damn! Lin Ming was panic-stricken. At this time, everyone's attention was turned towards Lin Ming. They were well aware that the Soul Emperor's goal was Lin Ming and he was the greatest threat to the Soul Emperor. As everyone was guarding Lin Ming, they never thought that the Soul Emperor would also change targets, instead focusing on Xiang Mei. In the final moments, in order to help Lin Ming block the Soul Emperor's all-out attack, she had risked her life and had now fallen into a half-unconscious state. She was powerless to resist the Soul Emperor. Hum! A black vortex swirled and Xiang Mei was sucked into a black space by the Soul Emperor. Let her go! Lin Ming's eyes turned red with rage. He didn't have much strength remaining, barely enough to protect himself, much less attack the Soul Emperor. Die! Lin Ming recklessly attacked. He lifted the black dragon spear and threw it with all his recently restored strength. However, the might of Lin Ming's current attack couldn't even compare to the attack formed from the condensed power of Emperor Sakya and the numerous Empyreans. Bang! With a loud ring, the Black Dragon spear crashed into the Soul Emperor's protective energy. It was only able to pierce halfway through the energy shield before being drained of all energy and no longer able to pierce in. The Soul Emperor turned towards Lin Ming. What dwelled in his eyes was a hint of contempt, a hint of hatred, and a hint of sinister ruthlessness. I will make sure you always remember today. Since this bitch is so desperately willing to rescue you, then I will have her die for you. As the Soul Emperor spoke, he ripped open the void and stepped into a space channel. All of you will die. The Soul Emperor's final words were like a demonic curse that reverberated through space. Lin Ming rushed forwards as if he had gone crazy. Even the many human Empyreans moved at this time. However, they were too slow. They could only stare blankly on as the space channel ripped open by the Soul Emperor sealed itself up. Ah! Lin Ming roared out in unwillingness. In the final moment he shot out a true divinity mark onto the Soul Emperor. The Soul Emperor only coldly sneered, allowing the mark to fall onto his body. Damn it all! Lin Ming's fist smashed into the void. His arms shivered with rage and his eyes were red with anger, his blood nearly frozen in his body. He never thought that at the end, Xiang Mei would be captured by the Soul Emperor. Without Xiang Mei risking everything to defend against the Soul Emperor's last strike, he feared he would have already perished. And if Xiang Mei hadn't tried to save him, then her spiritual sea wouldn't have been torn apart and she wouldn't have fallen into a stupor, thus being captured by the Soul Emperor without any resistance at all. It's all my fault. What do I say to Jior? Lin Ming clenched his fists together and fell to his knees. Because of anger and worry, his nails had already dug into his flesh and blood. Lin Ming knew of Xiang Mei's past and also knew of how sad her fate and life experiences had been. Because of these things, Lin Ming had always felt a sense of pity for Xiang Mei. After their relationship had been clarified, Lin Ming had resolved that he would protect Xiang Mei. But he never imagined that today it would be her protecting him instead. She had overdrawn her life in order to block that final strike, and in the end was captured by the Soul Emperor, her life or death unknown. What he felt was hate. The Soul Emperor took away Xiang Mei, but his final goal is still me. He captured Xiang Mei because he is waiting for me to rescue her. Lin Ming had already guessed the Soul Emperor's goal. Since the Soul Emperor wouldn't be able to kill him for some time, then he would simply wait for Lin Ming to personally deliver himself to his door. To keep Xiang Mei hostage was the same as holding onto his fatal weakness. He needed to restore his wounds as quickly as possible and rescue Xiang Mei. Lin Ming. Emperor Sakya spoke up. He could feel how turbulent Lin Ming's mood was. His tone was hesitant and somewhat remorseful. During this battle, he hadn't been able to play any role. Divine Dream, Clear, Ink, Xiang Mei, they had paid a great price in order to preserve Lin Ming's life, but Emperor Sakya had only managed to lead a crowd of Empyreans here and send out a not-too-powerful attack at the end. In the end, they hadn't even been able to save Xiang Mei, causing the situation to deteriorate even further. Lin Ming, do you plan on going to rescue her? Emperor Sakya didn't know who Xiang Mei was, but he could see that she was extremely important to Lin Ming. If I don't. Lin Ming gripped his fists together. He understood that this was a trap. But even though he knew it was a trap, he still had to jump in. Emperor Sakya opened his mouth to speak but hesitated. He didn't want Lin Ming to go, but he also felt that he didn't have the qualifications to persuade Lin Ming to do anything. You will die. An old voice sounded out, the one who spoke was clear. Lin Ming turned, all sorts of complex emotions on his features. Thousands of years ago, when Lin Ming first saw Clear and Ink at the Azura Road's final trial, they had both been overflowing with life, glowing with boisterous health. But today, their beards and hair had gone white and their eyes had become as filthy as the Soul Emperor's, overflowing with a faint death aura. Seeing Clear's appearance, Lin Ming felt an inexplicable pain clutch at his heart. Clear and Ink had become like this because of him. Before, he had said to Divine Dream that he didn't want anyone to die for him. But he never imagined that even after he stopped Divine Dream from burning away her life, Xiang Mei would also fall into a crisis for him and Clear and Ink would exhaust their lives. That old demon has certainly set up a trap to wait for you. In our home ground, all of us are here and yet we were beaten into such a state by just an avatar. If you were to fight in a place that he set up instead, you would surely die. Ink also said. How could Lin Ming not understand his words? If he were to try and rescue Xiang Mei, it couldn't even be described as a slim chance of survival. Senior, I know this, but As Lin Ming spoke to her, he fell silent. No matter what, he couldn't finish those final words of I must go. In particular, as he looked at Clear and Ink who had lost a great deal of their life force, who had placed all their hopes in him, he couldn't bear to face their dirted eyes. Chapter 22-22, Choice. Lin Ming's mind trembled. He clenched his fists. He knew that his life was no longer entirely his own. His was a life that Divine Dream, Clear, Ink, and Immortal Sovereign had desperately risked themselves to save from the clutches of the Soul Emperor. Not just that, but on Lin Ming's road of growth, he had encountered many teachers and benefactors. They had pushed him forwards, pouring of all their hopes into him so that he could inherit their legacies. If he were to risk his life to Xiang Mei and was ultimately killed by the Soul Emperor, then how could he answer to them? Realizing this, Ink said, we aren't only saving you, but also saving ourselves. Without you, there is no one else capable of stopping that old demon. When the great catastrophe descends upon this world, I fear that there might no longer be any lives left existing in the 33 heavens. In truth, I don't have any qualifications to ask you to do anything, your choice is your own to make. However, I don't wish for you to send yourself to die. The key question here is, if you die, can you exchange your life for hers? Clear sighed. These words caused Lin Ming's thoughts to darken. Indeed, if he went to rescue Xiang Mei, then not to mention the disparity in strength between them, if the Soul Emperor were to be a little bit despicable and threaten him with Xiang Mei, then he would have no choice but to be cautious around him in fear of hurting her. In such a situation, how could he possibly win? His chances of defeating the Soul Emperor could be called near impossible. And if he didn't kill the Soul Emperor, how could he rescue Xiang Mei? Even if he offered his own life, would the Soul Emperor even consider this and be gracious enough to release Xiang Mei? The Soul Emperor's hatred towards Xiang Mei was enough for him to refine her soul and marrow 1,000 times over. But, if he didn't try to rescue her? As Lin Ming thought of Xiang Mei's fate having fallen into the Soul Emperor's hands, he felt as if his heart was being pulled out. It was almost unbearable to breathe. He was lost. On one side, he was the hope of humanity and perhaps even the hope of all life in the 33 heavens. On the other side was a woman who had been through life and death with him, who had risked herself to save him. On one side was the great cause of his race, the legacy of his seniors. On the other side was what his heart wanted, as well as the love between a man and a woman. To Lin Ming, this was an extremely agonizing choice. Lin Ming took out the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. In a daze, he released Divine Dream, Xiao Maxian, Mu Qianyu, and the others. Divine Dream was also incomparably weak. Within the Spirit Bead space, Xiao Maxian had exhausted every method at her disposal to stabilize Divine Dream's weakening fires of life. Divine Dream. Seeing Divine Dream appear, Empyrean Vast Universe was immediately moved and thrilled. Out of those here, he had the deepest feelings for Divine Dream. Divine Dream's body was stained with blood. Her face was pale and her life force was constantly draining from her. Seniors, do you have a pill that can make up for blood vitality? Lin Ming asked, finding it a bit difficult to say. He could guess that Clear and Ink likely didn't have too many precious pills with them. We do, but the grade is inferior to the one we gave you. Ink took out a pill bottle from his spatial ring. With a faint movement, a green medicinal pill tumbled out from the pill bottle. Seniors, you won't take any?
Lin Ming asked with worry. He could sense Clear and Ink's weakened life force.
Clear shook his head. These are pills from our master's pill furnace. These pills are suited to the races of the 33 heavens. As temple spirits, the strength of our blood vitality is different from yours, and eating these pills would be useless. Master, Lin Ming's heart shook. He remembered that Clear and Ink had said that the Azura Road Master had yet to die, but he simply didn't know where the Azura Road Master had gone. When he asked Clear and Ink about this, the reply had been that once Lin Ming possessed the strength to become a chess player instead of a chess piece, then that was when he would be informed of the Azura Road Master's whereabouts. And now, Lin Ming believed he had this strength. But now was not the time to ask such questions. Lin Ming quickly passed the pill to Divine Dream. No matter how precious this pill was, it could only hasten Divine Dream's ability to restore her blood vitality. To completely make up for all the side effects that Divine Dream suffered was actually incredibly difficult. After Divine Dream swallowed the pill, a hint of red finally appeared on her face. Lin Ming let out a sigh of relief. He looked towards Clear and Ink, seniors. Clear and Ink glanced at each other. They already guessed what Lin Ming was about to say. Clear said, "It is time that we lead you to see our master." "See Senior Azura?" Lin Ming asked, his thoughts shaken. He found it difficult to compose himself. For the majority of his life he had been hearing of the legends related to the Azura Roadmaster. This was the greatest powerhouse to exist in the history of all races in the 33 heavens, an existence that surpassed Immortal Sovereign. He was formidable and mysterious. However, what Lin Ming didn't understand was why hadn't he made his move yet? Could the wounds he suffered in the past truly be so severe that not even 10 billion years was enough time to recover? Some wounds could be restored after a period of rest or by eating up a pill. But there were some wounds that couldn't be recovered from. For instance, if one's body were cut in half, and that cut off half was destroyed. Or for instance, if one's soul or inner world was divided and destroyed. The mortal body, inner world, and soul were the three most important parts of a life. When a martial artist practiced martial arts, it was to enhance and temper these three parts. This was the ultimate manifestation of a martial artist's cultivation. If the body or soul was split in half and destroyed, then although one could reform themselves, that would be equivalent to reducing one's cultivation by half. One's talent and potential would suffer injury, and this sort of wound would also cause one's cultivation to drop. From that point on, one's cultivation would come to a standstill and it would be difficult to recover from this. This was particularly true for a beyond divinity existence like the Azura Roadmaster. There might not be any true divinity spirit treasure in existence that could help restore his wounds. Or, it could be like when Lin Ming was at the Skyspill planet and his soul source was sucked out of him without anything left remaining. Such wounds were even more serious. They were similar to someone burning all of their blood essence or soul essence, and eventually their life force would run dry and they would die. You also come, as well as the rest of you. We will meditate for a time to restore our wounds and then leave. Ink said to Divine Dream as well as Lin Ming's family members. Divine Dream had recovered a great deal by this time, and Xiao Moxian and the others had just emerged from the Grand Miss Spirit Bead. They were all startled to hear this. They never thought that Clear and Ink would call on them. Clear and Ink meditated for a period of time. Then, Ink took out an Azura command. Joining together with Clear, they opened up a space channel leading to the Azura Road. The wild universe was a long distance from the Azura Road and it would take some time to open the space channel. During this time, Xiao Moxian, Mu Qianyu, Qin Xingxuan, as well as Lin Ming's children, flew to his side and held his hands. Big Brother Lin. Lin Ming. Father. Daddy. The calls of his family echoed in Lin Ming's ears, touching his heart. When a person was in their most helpless moments, the care of their family could dispel this helplessness and confusion. Lin Ming looked at his family. At this time, they already learned what happened to Xiang Mei and how it happened. Jior.
Lin Ming traced Zhou's face, unsure as to what he could say.
Zhou tightly gripped Lin Ming's hand. Mother will be all right.
Zhou bit her lips and spoke in a slow and clear tone, as if she were not only telling Lin Ming this, but also herself.
Lin Ming.
Xiao Maxian, Mu Qianyu, and Qin Xingxuan held onto Lin Ming's hand. They could naturally feel the pain in his heart. There was nothing they could do to help him with this burden. They could only hold his hands and transmit their comfort to him. Xiao Maxian said with a sound transmission, "If you have decided on something, then go and do it.
There is no need to consider us." Lin Ming's heart warmed.
He knew that his decision was likely to mean that he would fall into further danger in the future. If anything happened to him, it was hard to imagine what his family would experience.
Xiao Moxian didn't want to distract Lin Ming, but how could he completely ignore his family's thoughts?
The situation he faced was far too difficult.
I will return safely. I promise this to you all.
Lin Ming grit his teeth and said. After that period of impulsiveness, Lin Ming had finally calmed down. If he rashly rushed out to look for the Soul Emperor, then not only would he not be able to save Shang Mei but he would also die in vain. There would be no meaning to this. He wanted to rescue Shang Mei not just so he could live with a clear heart and mind, but also because he wanted to truly save her. At this time, the space channel to the Azura Road opened.
Let's go, Ink and Clear said.
They flew towards the Azura Road together. Lin Ming, Divine Dream, and Lin Ming's family followed close behind. After flying through the space channel for an unknown period of time, the scenery around them changed and they arrived upon a wild plain.
This was the Azura Road's Great Desolate.
Seeing this scene before him, Lin Ming was filled with a myriad of emotions.
He had returned to the Azura Road once again.
This world had accompanied Lin Ming for the majority of his life.
Chapter 22-23, Seeing Azura. Senior Azura, is he in the Azura Road?
Lin Ming originally had many guesses as to just where the Azura Road Master was. He even thought that the Azura Road Master might be in the Dark Abyss, perhaps even the Demon God's tomb. It was only now that he learned the Azura Road Master had never left the world he created.
Ink nodded. Master dwells here.
He has been waiting all this time, waiting for a full 10 billion years. Once you see the Master, you will know the whole story and the doubts in your heart will also be explained. As Clear and Ink spoke, they began to fly towards the Azura Sea. They didn't pass through a transmission array but directly tore through the void and crossed towards the Great Desolate. The Azura Road had an extremely strange shape. It was very narrow and very long, just like a road, thus the reason for its name.
The two ends of this road were the outer Azura Road and the inner Azura Road, with the Great Desolate acting as the dividing line. Even an Empyrean-level martial artist couldn't cross safely. But for Clear and Ink, crossing through the Great Desolate was actually easy. As the two of them continuously opened space channels, the group only required half a day to reach the Azura Sea. The Azura Sea was the entrance of the final trial. During every opening of the final trial, all the heroes from the various influences across the Azura Road would gather here at the Azura Sea. This sea was unfathomably deep, even a star could be submerged within it. The rumors said that deep in the Azura Sea there were many space labyrinths and turbulent whirlpools. There were even true divinity-level vicious beasts dwelling there. Thus, the martial artists of the Azura Road had never dared to enter the Azura Sea. As for how deep the sea was, no one knew. But today Lin Ming realized that he would have to go to the very bottom of the Azura Sea. In front of him, Ink and Clear revolved their energies, forming a channel in the Azura Sea. Lin Ming passed through this channel, flying down with the group. Their speed was incredibly fast. Lin Ming had no idea how deep down he dived. It seemed as if this sea was bottomless. Senior Azura is at the bottom of the Azura Sea? Lin Ming asked.
Clear shook his head.
That isn't completely accurate.
But, you will soon know, we've almost arrived.
Clear and Ink slowed down.
At this time, within the thick and heavy darkness and the highly pressured seawater, Lin Ming finally saw the seabed of the Azura Sea. The dark gray seabed was without any life at all. A massive mountain range that extended for 1,000 miles lay at the bottom. Seeing this giant mountain range, Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. With his sharp senses, he found that there was something unusual about this seabed. Although it was quiet, it actually possessed faint life fluctuations. This wasn't a mountain range but a giant snake covered in dust. A true divinity-level vicious beast, Lin Ming's eyes flashed.
Yes, its name is Darkness.
It is the guardian of this part of the Azura Sea, and if a martial artist from the Azura Road really comes down, it is responsible for chasing them away.
Let's continue forwards.
As Ink spoke, he lightly stabbed his finger towards somewhere deep in the sea. In front of them, the quiet seawater began to roll with undercurrents. A distorted space stretched and grew, forming an underwater whirlpool that sucked in Lin Ming.
Then, the seawater vanished. The pressure deep within the Azura Sea was originally at a terrifying level.
Now, Lin Ming felt his body lighten as he arrived in a strange space.
This space wasn't too large. It was only several hundred feet in width and length.
As Lin Ming saw what was around him, his heart shook.
This space, this is.
Lin Ming looked around him. Everything was carved from purple crystal.
Crystal furniture, crystal ground, crystal bed.
This sort of crystal shimmered with translucent light, similar to quartz.
Lin Ming had never seen anything like it before.
Just by gently touching it, he could feel a vast sea of energy within, as if the purest energy in existence was gathered in these crystals.
Amethyst?
This thought inexplicably appeared in Lin Ming's mind.
More than purple crystal, it was more appropriate to call this amethyst. Amethyst origin crystal. Could this be?
As Lin Ming was deep in thought, a faint voice reverberated within this amethyst space.
The place you are in is a cave dwelling that I refined in the past using the amethyst origin crystal as the foundation.
I named this place the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, but because the energy and heavenly materials required to refine it were far too much, I had to repeatedly shrink it in size. At the end, the final refined product was only several hundred feet in size.
This sudden voice possessed an ancient majesty, making one feel something inexplicable within them.
Listening to this voice, Lin Ming felt his own soul faintly resonate with it. He knew that this came from a sympathetic echoing of the Azura laws. This voice could cause the Azura laws in his body to vibrate. Lin Ming took a deep breath and fell to his knees, deeply bowing. He knew that the one who spoke was the person he came to see today.
Junior Lin Ming greets Senior Azura.
Lin Ming said, excited.
This legendary character would finally appear before him.
He was the leader of the ancient races from 10 billion years ago, and 10 billion years ago he was already the number one character of the 33 heavens. Lin Ming bowed for several breaths of time before lifting his head up. What he saw before him was simply emptiness. Within this cave dwelling forged from amethyst, he still didn't see the Azura Road Master, not even his shadow. There is no need to look. The majority of my body has already integrated into the Azura Road itself.
This Amethyst Heavenly Palace is the cornerstone of the Azura Road, thus I had you come here. This ancient and majestic voice echoed in Lin Ming's ears once more. The body had merged with the Azura Road?
Lin Ming was bewildered.
The Azura Road Master had actually fused together with the Azura Road. Senior, since your body has fused with the Azura Road, then does this mean you cannot leave the Azura Road?
If this was the reason, then it could be explained why the Azura Road Master had yet to move against the Soul Emperor.
But, why would the Azura Road Master do this? I know you have many questions in your heart. I also note that the reason you came here today is not just to ask these questions, but to ask me to help you in saving a woman.
The Azura Road Master's words caused Lin Ming's mind to shake.
Lin Ming deeply bowed once more. Senior Azura, Junior's beloved wife, has been captured by the Soul Emperor. I ask for Senior to guide this Junior onto the correct path.
Lin Ming was well aware that no matter what he tried to do, it would be difficult for him to save Xiang Mei. All that lay in front of him was a dead end, and only the Azura Road Master had a slight chance of being able to give him a guiding light. However, Lin Ming's question caused that majestic voice to fall silent. Lin Ming grit his teeth, quietly waiting on. After a long time, the Azura Road Master sighed deeply. He said, "Perhaps the situation is different than how you think it is. The Soul Emperor may have captured your wife, but it isn't to threaten you and have you walk into a trap. Instead, there are other reasons."
Other reasons?
Lin Ming was startled.
Could the Soul Emperor have captured Xiang Mei just for the sake of revenge?
The Soul Emperor should know that if he killed Xiang Mei, then besides enraging Lin Ming, it wouldn't help his great cause at all. With the Soul Emperor's temperament, he wouldn't waste even a single breath for something so insignificant.
I ask Senior to clarify the matter.
Lin Ming asked, his voice a bit anxious.
The Azura Road Master replied, "I can now sense vibrations of the amethyst origin crystal. It is likely that the Soul Emperor already stands atop the Eternal Wall. From what I sense of the amethyst origin crystal, it makes me think of a possibility.
Perhaps the Soul Emperor trained your wife because he had a goal in his mind all along.
If what I think is true, then you are doomed to be unable to save her."
The Azura Road Master's words caused Lin Ming's heart to fall.
His hands couldn't help but tremble. The Soul Emperor's goal. Eternal Wall. Amethyst origin crystal.
When the Soul Emperor first captured Xiang Mei, Lin Ming's first thought was that he had done so to threaten him. But now, he realized that his thoughts might have been wrong from the very start.
The Soul Emperor had trained Xiang Mei with a goal in mind, a goal that even Xiang Mei didn't know about.
The Soul Emperor had left seclusion not just to kill him, but also to find Xiang Mei. He had misunderstood everything from the start, and he simply couldn't save Xiang Mei.
Couldn't save. Couldn't save. Lin Ming was left in a daze.
He had come with hopes that the Azura Road Master would be able to guide him in the right direction, but the answer he obtained actually left him wallowing in despair.
At this time, across layers of space, the dark abyss.
This was a vast and endless earth, one that extended beyond the horizon. The ground was covered with countless shattered bones, dark gray ashes, and deathly stillness. These bones were left behind by the Great War 10 billion years ago between powerful abyssals and overlords of the 33 heavens. Even though they had been eroded by the passing of time, they still shined with the light of laws. Darkness, killing intent, death, this was the atmosphere of this land, this was the dark abyss's eternal wall. The Soul Emperor stood atop the eternal wall, feeling the surging power of this world, deep in thought. After a number of days, his appearance had become even more aged. The sudden changes in the Emperor Bone Sea had caused him heavy losses. Originally only the Soul Emperor's eyes were old and dirty and his eyes overflowing with death. However, his face remained as fine and beautiful as that of a youth, except just slightly more pale. But now, due to the changes in the Emperor Bone Sea, his face was mottled with wrinkles and the skin on his neck had withered and cracked. He seemed like someone on the verge of death. Behind the Soul Emperor stood a black-clothed woman. This woman was Xiang Mei. She had been captured by the Soul Emperor. Xiang Mei's face was pale. Her blood vitality, true essence, and laws had all been sealed away. She was completely powerless to resist. The Soul Emperor's back faced Xiang Mei. He looked at this ancient battlefield from 10 billion years ago and sighed with emotion. This land hasn't changed even after 10 billion years. He turned his head and looked at Xiang Mei, a smile curving up his lips. Do you know why I trained you in the past? The Soul Emperor continued to say, I already knew that you wanted to rebel against me in your heart, and I also knew of your last life. You were the daughter of my blood enemy from 10 billion years past. Even so, I only planted my spirit mark in your spiritual seed to track you, and didn't place a slave seal within you. I controlled your freedom, but I didn't control your thoughts.
I allowed you to hate me, disrespect me, and I tolerated it all. I wanted your heart and mine to be unhindered. Even in the past, when you wanted to save Lin Ming's life and allow him to live the rest of his years as a mortal, I allowed you to do so. And all of these things, have you never considered why I did so? Chapter 22-24, Fate. The Soul Emperor's words caused Shang Mei's eyebrows to press together. She had a foreboding premonition in her heart. Ever since she entered the Azura Forbidden Land, these feelings had been there. Because Lin Ming had suffered an accident, Shang Mei thought that this foreboding premonition had come from him. But now it seemed that this premonition was because of herself and was completely unrelated to Lin Ming. It was also the reason why she was captured by the Soul Emperor. As she stood atop the Eternal Wall, Shang Mei was able to gradually guess what the Soul Emperor's true goal was. What was placed before her was a great scheme, a scheme where she would surely die. 10 billion years. The Eternal Wall has sealed this land for 10 billion years. Not only has it sealed away the Dark Abyss, but it has also divided my body. The land of the Dark Abyss is far too small and the resources are too barren. The Abyssals in the Dark Abyss are like a black dragon locked in by chains. No matter how glorious your martial arts civilization of 100 billion years is, no matter how wonderful your inheritances, no matter how much you screen out your talent and bloodline over time, these are heavy chains that are impossible to break free from. Without powerful Abyssals, where would I obtain rich sacrifices to have the world of the demon god's tomb become ever more perfect? This Eternal Wall has become a knife in my heart, and I must pull it out no matter what. But unfortunately, the Eternal Wall is formed from the Amethyst Origin Crystal. If it were just the Amethyst Origin Crystal, then there wouldn't be much to fear, but there is also a great array formation left behind by Azura. 10 billion years ago, your previous life offered herself in a blood sacrifice, pouring her source strength and source divine soul into the Eternal Wall in order to become the final lock that bound this place. For the last 10 billion years, I have attempted countless methods but have been unable to break apart the Eternal Wall. Then, I took a step backwards. If I cannot shatter it, then I will simply unravel it. As long as the Eternal Wall is undone, then it will return into the Amethyst Origin Crystal. If this happened, not only would I pull out the knife in my heart, but I would also gain a divine tool. Wouldn't this just be wonderful? However, to unravel this seal isn't easy. I deeply delved into studying this seal for numerous years and finally managed to just barely find a method that would work. In order to end this trouble, I needed the one who started it. In the past, you were the one who sealed this land with your final blood sacrifice. And now, in order to unravel this seal, I also need your blood. Originally, your previous life died. But luckily for me, she wasn't resigned to fading into ashes and nothingness. She left behind her 10th reincarnation, and this allowed me to find you. When I did, I also found a ray of hope to unseal the Eternal Wall. The reason I trained you has never been because I need another helper. I have never been lacking for helpers, and I have always required my followers to be absolutely loyal to me, just like Deep Child. Compared to Deep Child, where do you think you have the qualifications to become my right hand? To train you is no different from raising a tiger to bring about disaster. How can I not understand this truth? But, I still put my full effort forwards in order to strengthen you, so that you could become a peerless genius. This was because I needed you to reach the true divinity realm, and even possess strength that far surpassed others at your level. Only like this would your source blood essence be strong enough to act as the key to open the Eternal Wall. As the Soul Emperor spoke, Shang Mei's mind quaked. She finally understood what was happening. In order to display her talent to the fullest, the Soul Emperor wasn't able to control an independent personality. Only like this would she be able to dig out the limits of her potential. If she were only a puppet that was controlled by others, how could she reach the highest boundaries of martial arts? Thus, even if the Soul Emperor knew she had thoughts of rebelling, he still didn't suppress her. Instead, he made use of her ambitions. He even deliberately condoned and cultivated her hatred towards him, making her treat him as an enemy so that she would push herself even further,
stimulating all of her potential to defy him. The Soul Emperor continued, "You thought you had the bloodline of the Dark Angel race, and were even an orphan of the Dark Angels.
In truth, I implanted this bloodline within you.
I completely exterminated the Dark Angel race and took the essence of their bloodline to implant into you.
Do you know just how much I've done for you? You don't know.
You only thought that I destroyed the Dark Angel race as well as eliminated all the enemies of your people. But this was also information that I intentionally allowed you to know. I even opened the demon god's tomb ahead of time so that you could carry out the abyssal ritual and accept the totem abyssal level inheritance, directly increasing your strength to that of a true divinity, and perhaps even higher than that. If you had obediently accepted the inheritance at that time, then I wouldn't have controlled you. I wanted you to become stronger, continuously stronger.
However, what happened in the demon god's tomb left me surprised.
Not only did you not accept the totem abyssal level inheritance, but you even managed to accidentally break through the spirit mark and energy mark that I left within you. Although the process was completely unlike what I thought it was, if I only look at the results, then you have indeed broken into true divinity and have met my most basic requirements. I had to leave seclusion early. Even if this hindered my cultivation and caused me heavy losses so that a mortal found a chance to harm me, I still had no choice but to do so. There were two matters I needed to complete.
The first was to kill Lin Ming, and the second was to regain control over you.
I wasn't able to kill Lin Ming, and that is something I deeply regret. But I still managed to take back control of you. I have raised you for such a long time, and now, it is time to make use of you. In particular, at this moment your previous life's father has taken control of half the Emperor Bonesi and wishes to perish together with me. I must return and fuse with my other two avatars, turning our three bodies into one. I need to refine Immortal's remnant soul and truly merge together with the demon god's tomb so that I can obtain everlasting and undying life. I do not have much time left.
Come, my child.
I have raised you for such a long time, and it was all for this moment. As the Soul Emperor spoke, his gaze became fierce and hideous. With his scattered hair and withered old skin, he looked like a blood-sucking ghost.
You can keep dreaming.
Shang Mei clenched her teeth and wildly struggled. However, her energies and laws were all imprisoned by the Soul Emperor.
She wasn't afraid of death.
But she didn't want her death and blood to help the Soul Emperor and cause Lin Ming and Jior to suffer disaster.
Don't waste your time.
I caught you after so much trouble, so how could I allow you a chance to sever your meridians and commit suicide?
Just become my sacrifice.
As the Soul Emperor spoke, death energy gushed out from his body. Dark winds howled all around him. Atop the dark eternal wall, bones shattered and flew upwards, as if countless suffering souls were dancing in the skies. The Soul Emperor walked towards Shang Mei, one step at a time. He stretched out his skeleton-like hand to grasp at her neck.
Death was so close.
At this moment, despair rose up in Shang Mei's heart. The Soul Emperor's seal was far too powerful, she couldn't even resist.
Was this the end of her destiny?
Upon birth, she was raised as a sacrifice. She didn't know her past and she didn't know her future, all that existed in her life was cultivating and cultivating even more. She didn't have love, she didn't have friends, she didn't have anything at all.
But then, she had Jior.
She learned of her past life and she confirmed her feelings with Lin Ming. She now had a goal in life. She had something she needed to protect, and with this she understood the significance of life. But after understanding all of this, what she faced was death.
If it were only dying, then that wasn't scary.
Before death there were at least many beautiful memories she could recall. At the very least, in the 1,500 years she spent in the demon god's tomb, although she had been cultivating all that time, she had Jior and Lin Ming accompanying her. She had felt nothing but incomparable satisfaction. However, she now knew that not only would she die, but her death would bring about destruction to everything she loved and wanted to protect.
Was this the entirety of her life?
She was raised in sorrow and she would die in tragedy. When she was alive, she had suffered by herself. But when she died, she would instead bring suffering upon the world.
Was there anything more painful than this?
Xiang Mei felt as if she had been swallowed alive. This was a fate that she could not avoid or resist.
Chapter 22-25, Twists and Turns. Space locked up and slowly came drawing in. World strength surged outwards, completely covering Xiang Mei.
Facing the Soul Emperor's strength, Xiang Mei didn't even know how to begin resisting him. She closed her eyes in pain. The sounds of bones cracking from beneath the Soul Emperor's feet echoed in her ears like the pained howls of lost souls.
The Soul Emperor's hand drew close.
His deathly pale palm was withered and dry, a horrible sight to behold. Yet, those 10 nails were sharp and cruel, shining with a cold luminescence.
Xiang Mei couldn't even revolve her true essence right now.
From half a foot away, just the cold wind coming from the Soul Emperor's nails were enough to cut Xiang Mei's skin.
Blood flowed out.
On top of Xiang Mei's snow-white neck, it was like a red plum had fallen into the snow.
What a beautiful color!
The Soul Emperor's eyes lit up with a feverishly frantic light. As long as the eternal wall was open, then he could gather together his 3 bodies, and his strength would rise even further. At that time the Soul Emperor could fully control the Emperor Bonesi and complete his incomplete seclusion.
Then, he would thoroughly fuse together with the world of the demon god's tomb.
This was the final goal that he had plotted for 100 billion years. Now, it would finally be realized.
Pata! Pata! Xiang Mei's blood dripped onto the black earth and was slowly absorbed.
Meanwhile, the Soul Emperor reached out his other hand towards his own decrepit, firewood-like chest.
Puff!
He forcefully dug his claw into the pit of his chest. Pitch-black blood, thick and viscous, slowly flowed out. Even though his mortal body felt pain, the Soul Emperor didn't seem to sense this at all. He continued to diabolically grin as he reached in to break off a rib and then pull it out. Blood flowed out from the corners of the Soul Emperor's lips and his eyes glowed with an increasingly strong death aura. If he wished to open the eternal wall and unravel the great array formation within, not only did he need Xiang Mei's blood sacrifice, but he also needed to pay a certain price. The Soul Emperor crumbled his own rib. The half-foot-long rib turned into shards of inch-long bone that resembled broken glass. The shards flew into the skies, forming a great array formation in the world. World strength gathered, the flow becoming ever stronger.
The grand feast has been prepared. Now, give me your life.
The Soul Emperor reached out to grasp Xiang Mei. But at this time, from behind the Soul Emperor, light ripples appeared in the space behind him. Although this was the most important ritual that the Soul Emperor had carried out in his life, his senses remained incredibly sharp. He immediately sensed these strange spatial fluctuations.
Who is it? The Soul Emperor's first thought was that someone wanted to sneak attack him and ruin his ritual.
In this critical point, if someone were to sneak attack him, then, although the Soul Emperor could deal with it, the event would still bring about many troubles and unknown variables. The Soul Emperor did not like unknown variables, particularly after his failed attempt to kill Lin Ming. With spatial fluctuations, the greatest possibility was that someone would appear from a spatial channel and launch attacks against him. The space on the surface of the Eternal Wall was inferior to the stability of the demon god's tomb. But, because of the energy storm here, wanting to find accurate spatial coordinates and appear behind him wasn't easy at all.
This was proof that this new opponent was incredibly strong. No matter who you are, since you have appeared here, then die. The Soul Emperor stepped forwards, slamming his palm at that blurry space channel. Gotcha! The space channel exploded.
Beneath the Soul Emperor's attack, no one would have escaped unscathed.
Even an outstanding true divinity like Lin Ming would have been wounded.
However, as this palm struck out, the Soul Emperor was left startled. The space channel was only a space channel, there was no one inside.
But if no one was inside, why would a space channel suddenly appear?
As these doubts flashed through the Soul Emperor's mind, the power of turbulent space began to stir behind him once more. Another space channel had appeared. The Soul Emperor turned and saw that the powerless Shang Mei was being sucked towards that suddenly produced space channel vortex. What? The Soul Emperor was sent into a furious rage. What angered him was that whether it was entraining Shang Mei or seizing her from the 33 heavens, he had paid a great price in order to do this. Now, just as he was about to offer Shang Mei in a blood sacrifice and complete the final necessary step, someone decided to use this key moment to save her. And what was shocking was that he had locked his sense onto his surroundings all this time and had sensed no one. Just who had such great abilities that they could locate him and then open 2 space channels without him knowing, using one to divert his attention and then opening another beneath Shang Mei's feet to take her away. You are seeking death. The space channel was drawing in Shang Mei at an incredible speed. However, the Soul Emperor's reaction was even faster. He thrust out his palm, world strength surging around him. In this moment, the Soul Emperor could have killed Shang Mei 10 times over already. However, there were too many complex steps required in the blood sacrifice ritual, and if he didn't complete them before killing Shang Mei, then that would cause all his plans to fail. Thus, the Soul Emperor didn't aim at Shang Mei, his goal was the space channel. Whoosh! Shang Mei was drawn into the space channel. But, as the space channel was attempting to close, the boundless world strength of the Soul Emperor blocked it from doing so, keeping it from closing. I want to take a good look at who has such great abilities. The Soul Emperor wanted to pursue Shang Mei. He had branded her with his true divinity mark and he could near instantly reach her side. However, just as he was about to enter the space channel, he felt a massive amount of pressure emerge from it. This pressure squeezed out his world strength, wanting to crush it and forcibly close the space channel. What? The Soul Emperor was bewildered. Someone existed who could resist his world strength. No, this is wrong. This strength comes from the Eternal Wall's Great Array formation itself. Could the Eternal Wall be coming to save Shang Mei? How is this possible? The Soul Emperor was left shocked. In this world, there was no one who possessed the ability to contend with him directly. However, the Eternal Wall was different. This was something which possessed an array formation that the Azura Roadmaster had poured his source energy into. In addition, Shang Mei's previous life had offered herself in a blood sacrifice, fusing all of her life essence and even pouring in the inherited strength that Immortal Sovereign had passed down to her. Moreover, the main body of the Eternal Wall was also one of the 3 divine tools, the Amethyst Origin Crystal. With these 3 factors combined together, the Eternal Wall had a strength that even the Soul Emperor feared. As he felt his own world strength being squeezed out, the Soul Emperor was enraged. He used his hands and forcefully grabbed at the edges of the space channel, wanting to tear it apart. In his heart he knew that no matter what, he couldn't allow this space channel to close. He had already confirmed that this space channel originated from the inner space of the Eternal Wall. The Eternal Wall was a wholly complete self, and the Soul Emperor wasn't sure why it would open a channel to suddenly rescue Shang Mei. However, he knew that once the channel opened, it was equal to tearing an opening within an originally complete wall. With this opening, the Eternal Wall was no longer perfect. As long as he could continue to rip open this tear, then he could surely completely open it. With this in mind, the Soul Emperor poured more and more strength into the space channel to resist the Eternal Wall's pressure. And at this time, within the space channel, Shang Mei had arrived in a purple space. This place is. Shang Mei was shocked. She thought her death was assured, but the moment she was about to be turned into a blood sacrifice by the Soul Emperor, she had been sucked into this space. And what stood in front of her was a little girl that seemed to be 13 to 14 years of age. You saved me? Shang Mei felt this all inconceivable. A little girl like this had the ability to save her? She could not see through the little girl's cultivation at all. This was strange, because she was sure that this little girl wasn't too strong herself, so how could she possibly save her from the Soul Emperor? Who are you? Shang Mei asked, puzzled. At the moment before her death, a little girl she had never seen before with such a low level of strength had managed to transmit her into this space. It was no different from a dream.
My name is Yin Little Fish, you can call me Fishy. Do you know Big Brother Lin Ming? Fishy timidly asked.
When she listened in on the conversation between the Soul Emperor and Shang Mei, she had heard the Soul Emperor mention Lin Ming's name. It seemed as if this mysterious big sister had some sort of relationship with her big brother Lin Ming.
Lin Ming, you called him your big brother? Shang Mei was lost. A strange little girl had used completely inconceivable methods to rescue her and also knew of Lin Ming? Just who was this little girl and what was her background? Chapter 22-26, Prelude to the Final Battle. Fishy, how did you meet your big brother Lin Ming? Shang Mei asked Fishy.
Fishy related her experiences about how she met him in True Martial City, and also told Shang Mei how she ended up here. When Mo Evers now tried to cross into the Dark Abyss in the past, she had been sucked into this place. From that point on she had stayed in here. She didn't know how many years she had been here for, but she slowly discovered that she had completely merged with the amethyst space around her. She was able to control this space, as if doing so was a part of her most natural instincts.
Fishy's words startled Shang Mei.
She realized that this amethyst space was the inner space of the Eternal Wall.
In other words, the inner space of the amethyst origin crystal.
The little girl in front of her could control the amethyst origin crystal.
Just how was she related to the amethyst origin crystal?
As Shang Mei was left confused by all of this, she suddenly felt this amethyst space tremble around her. The fierce trembling continued, leaving Shang Mei and Fishy shaken. Immediately, a violent and evil strength came pouring down onto them.
Soul Emperor. Shang Mei's complexion paled.
Fishy opening and closing a space channel into the amethyst space had all been done in front of the Soul Emperor. Although the three divine tools were powerful, they were by no means invincible. Upon reaching the level of the Soul Emperor, one already possessed the ability to resist the strength of a great world. As the amethyst space wished to seal itself again, the Soul Emperor poured his strength within to forcibly prevent it from doing so. Not just that, but the Soul Emperor was trying to slowly rip open the space channel a bit at a time.
This is bad. Shang Mei's heart sank.
Once the Soul Emperor tore open the space channel and entered the amethyst space, the consequences would be inconceivable. The Soul Emperor continued to pour in his strength, becoming increasingly formidable. But his actions also aroused the resistance of the Eternal Wall. Shang Mei sensed that the Eternal Wall's energy started to gather from all around. It wanted to push out the Soul Emperor's energy. In a moment, both sides reached a mutual balance, neither side able to take an advantage. However, Shang Mei was increasingly worried as she saw this. It had to be known that the energy of a great array formation tended to be self-circulating and insulated. Although it could absorb energy from the outside, in normal situations the energy it absorbed was only sufficient to continue revolving the array formation. For a grand array formation to achieve perfect energy balance, this was a splendidly amazing array formation. Such an array formation could continue for billions of years without fear of lacking energy. The Eternal Wall was one such grand array formation. It had a balanced level of energy and even had a little bit extra. In addition to a divine tool as its foundation, this grand array formation could stand tall for 10 billion years without breaking. But no matter how perfect a grand array formation was, once a flaw appeared then it was no longer perfect. It was like a bag of air with a small hole stabbed in it, slowly deflating. Time passed, a minute and a second at a time. The energy within the Eternal Wall was like a vast sea smashing forwards again and again. However, the Soul Emperor's evil energy within the space channel was incomparably tenacious and refused to disappear. This process continued for many days. The Soul Emperor's energy was slowly compressed into an energy mark within the amethyst space. At this time, the space channel finally sealed itself back up. The amethyst space fell quiet once more, its calm restored. However, Shang Mei didn't feel any joy at all. She could faintly feel that the Soul Emperor's energy mark had already melted into the Eternal Wall's Grand Array formation, and was blending into its energy structure. It was like a malignant tumor, slowly absorbing energy and growing stronger. The Soul Emperor had finally found a breaking point through the Eternal Wall. The Eternal Wall had already existed for 10 billion years. The Soul Emperor had studied it for an incredibly long period of time and likely understood the energy structure behind it. An array formation was inanimate, but the Soul Emperor was alive. Sooner or later, the Eternal Wall would be broken through by him. But the Soul Emperor didn't want to wait. What he needed was one final straw to crush the camel's back. His original choice had been Shang Mei. Even though his plan had failed, the result would not change. In the past, when the Azura Road Master in Shang Mei's previous life laid down the Eternal Wall, they had already expected that it would be impossible for this Eternal Wall to block the steps of the Abyssal Race for eternity. There would come a day when the Eternal Wall was torn down and the 33 heavens would face the invasion of the Dark Abyss once more. This was the destined flow of history. Although it might be delayed or hastened by one or two accidental events, the final result would still move towards an established direction. It was an accident that Fishy rescued Shang Mei, and it was this accident that allowed the Soul Emperor to plant a seed within the Eternal Wall. With a flaw in the Eternal Wall, it was no longer indestructible. This was just like an adult male being unable to crush a complete egg in his hand. But once there was a crack in this egg, even if it were a small crack that one couldn't even see, then the integrity of the egg would be compromised and even a small child could crush it then. Fishy. Shang Mei looked at Fishy, her gaze filled with guilt. Fishy had rescued her, yet all she brought to Fishy was nothing but bad luck. Azura Road, Amethyst Heavenly Palace. Lin Ming sat in meditation for several days within this space. His injuries had already healed by a great deal. Normally, when a martial artist overdraw their life force like Lin Ming did, then they would have already dropped boundaries. Yet, Lin Ming actually didn't suffer many losses. This terrifying resilience and regenerative ability was all thanks to the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. In his battle with the Soul Emperor, it was unavoidable for his cultivation to be reduced. But in the final moments, he had fused together his inner and outer universes, becoming one with the heavens. He had made great strides in his laws, and these harvests surpassed the losses to his blood vitality and cultivation. During these days, Lin Ming worried over Shang Mei. He had a faint spiritual connection with her and could sense that she had yet to die. Lin Ming didn't know what was occurring, but he was left impatient and anxious. But he also knew that trying to rescue Shang Mei in his current state was impossible. Lin Ming, I can feel the Amethyst Origin Crystal's energy weakening. The Demon God's Tomb Master should be attempting to break through the Eternal Wall. Your wife has not died, but as for what happened specifically, I do now know. Azura's voice suddenly echoed in the void. Senior, what should this junior do? Lin Ming knew that once the Eternal Wall opened, then the Soul Emperor, Deep, and Flood would fuse together as one, perhaps even finally thoroughly refining the Demon God's tomb. At this time, it was unimaginable how strong the Demon God's Tomb Master would become. That moment would be the apocalypse for all life in the 33 heavens. The Azura Road Master fell silent for a long time. Then, he slowly said, "It is time to start the arrangements that I've planned for all these years. It is only that the day came far sooner than I thought it would." The arrangements you've planned in these years? Lin Ming asked, stunned. 10 billion years ago, when I and the previous life of Shang Mei joined together to lay down the Eternal Wall, I had already been considering this day. My Azura Road and Immortal's Akashic Dream Universe had both been prepared for this day. I split apart my body, divine soul, and inner world, and fused together with the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, and the reason I did all of this was in order to protect these two lands. For all these years, under my protection, the Demon God's Tomb Master was not able to destroy the Azura Road or Akashic Dream Universe. But at the same time, I was also unable to prevent the Demon God's Tomb Master from slowly restoring his strength. All I could do was quietly wait. Listening to the Azura Road Master's words, Lin Ming was left stunned. Azura Road, Akashic Dream Universe. When Lin Ming first stepped into the Azura Road, he had already been speculating about the reasons for why the Azura Road Master had spent so much effort and energy to create the Azura Road. If this great world was merely created so that the Azura Road Master could choose his descendants, then it seemed a little bit overdone. This world formed a complete system, and there were also many unique laws that existed here. There were guardians that tended to this world, as well as the final trial that was wrapped in mysteries.
All of these things were planned so that the Azura Road Master could resist the Demon God's Tomb Master's schemes?
As for the Akashic Dream Universe, Lin Ming had once entered that place too. He knew that after the Demon God's Tomb Master had seized the body of the Soul Emperor, he had slowly obtained the complete Holy Scripture from the Akashic Dream Universe. This was also an inevitable matter. After all, for the last 10 billion years, all parts of the Holy Scripture had been slowly searched for and collected by Spirita's martial artists. With the Soul Emperor's time and energy, it wouldn't be difficult for him to piece together the complete Holy Scripture. But Lin Ming also knew that many trials in the Akashic Dream Universe had corresponding rewards that were various golden pages of the Holy Scripture. But when he went into the Akashic Dream Universe, many of these golden pages had yet to be taken by others. When Lin Ming had learned of the Soul Emperor's true identity and his plans, he had also been left a bit puzzled. With the Soul Emperor's absolute strength, it shouldn't have been difficult for him to forcibly seize these golden pages. But now he understood that all of this was prevented by the protection of the Azura Road Master. 10 billion years ago, the two peerless characters of the past had created two great worlds in order to resist the Demon God's tomb. Of the two of them, one had perished with nothing left but a remnant soul. Even then, he had waited in silence within the Emperor Bone Sea to give the Soul Emperor one final heavy strike. As for the other person, he still lived and had been quietly protecting these two great worlds for 10 billion years, waiting for the final battle to arrive. Lin Ming's heart was shaken beyond words. He didn't know what he could say or what expressions he could make to describe what Immortal and Azura had done. All he could do was inherit their legacies and face this final great calamity.
Chapter 22-27, Plans.
Lin Ming, when the Soul Emperor re-enters the Demon God's tomb, the three avatars of the Demon God's Tomb Master will fuse back together and he will begin his final period of seclusion.
This is also the last bit of time we have left remaining. The Azura Road Master's faint voice sounded in the void.
Lin Ming never forgot that when his eternal soul was taken away by Shang Mei at the Skyspill planet, Shang Mei had said that the Soul Emperor would have to go into seclusion, and this period would go on for 10,000 years to 100,000 years. And at this time, because of Immortal Sovereign, the Emperor Bone Sea within the Demon God's tomb had nearly collapsed.
The Soul Emperor's first task would be to repair the Emperor Bone Sea and then go into seclusion to fuse with the Demon God's tomb.
Then, in terms of time, the Soul Emperor's period of seclusion would surely be longer than the 10,000 years that Shang Mei predicted. In the past, the Soul Emperor had already gone into seclusion for 9,000 years and he must have already refined the Eternal Soul. All that was left over was to repair the Emperor Bone Sea and thoroughly refine the Demon God's tomb. As for how much time this would take, Lin Ming didn't know.
Lin Ming.
The Demon God's Tomb Master fused together with the world of the Demon God's tomb, gathering heaven and man into one in dual, cultivating the inner self and outer self. In terms of the laws, the heights he reached have surpassed the past glories of both me and Immortal. This is also the reason why Immortal and I were defeated by him. Due to the idealistic conflicts in cultivating the inner and outer universes me and Immortal shared, we battled many times. Yet in the end, we were defeated by the Demon God's Tomb Master who had managed to gather heaven and man into one. That was truly the greatest joke of all time. Unfortunately, by the time we both realized that we had been wrong all along, it was no longer possible for us to turn back. Our laws, our foundation, everything had already been finalized and set in stone, and it would be impossible for us to return to a road that we had never walked down and reach the end of this road in a short period of time.
We cannot, but that does not mean that the children of the 33 heavens cannot. Immortal and I created our own worlds all in order to wait for a person to appear who could completely refine these worlds into their body and truly achieve the realm of fusing heaven and man, reaching a peak of martial arts that no one else has ever stepped upon. Only like this is there a chance of contending with the demon god's tomb master. And you are without a doubt the most suitable candidate for doing so. Refine the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe. Lin Ming took a deep breath, repeating these words to himself. He was clear just what these words meant. These were two superworlds. Although they were slightly worse than the world of the demon god's tomb, they were undoubtedly both at the level beyond divinity. And these two worlds were the polar opposite of each other, just like yin and yang sides of a primal chaos diagram. Fully fusing these two super worlds together within himself was easier said than done. I know what your concerns are. You think your boundary is too low. In fact, when Immortal and I created our own worlds, we also believed that we needed a genius that was at the peak of true divinity, and only such a character would be able to simultaneously refine both these great worlds and take hold of that opportunity to step beyond divinity. If there was someone with a lower cultivation, then that would be too difficult. But you are different. Not to mention that your strength, foundation, and mortal bodily have reached an inconceivable degree of formidability, but what is most important is that before refining the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, you have already fused together the Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra, even managing to wound the avatar of the demon god's tomb master with this. This is a boundary that Immortal and I yearned for in the past but were never able to reach. With your foundation and me putting in my full effort to help you, it is by no means impossible for you to jump ranks and refine the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe. Lin Ming, you should know that the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe contain not just the inheritances that Immortal and I left behind with all of our hearts and minds, but moreover, in the last 10 billion years, in the law system that composes the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, countless peerless talents of the 33 heavens have ventured within. Their comprehensions, cultivation methods, inheritances, experiences, and even their destinies were more or less recorded in the law systems of these two great worlds and accumulated for all this time. For 10 billion years this strength has been slowly gathering and had already reached an immeasurable degree. All of this has been prepared just for you. The Azura Road Master's words shocked the heart and mind. Lin Ming was left stunned. He knew that in these years, the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe had drawn in countless geniuses to enter their smelting trials. The Azura Road's numerous mystic realms, trial missions, final tests, the Akashic Dream Universe's golden pages, emperor carving, shrine platforms, various battlefields. There was simply an innumerable number of smelting trial lands. And it was for this reason that these two great worlds established a variety of rewards for those that participated. This was the reason why so many peerless geniuses within the 33 heavens chased these trials, and also the reason why many great influences took the completion percentage within the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe as their ultimate standard in judging the potential and talent of a genius. All of these things were plans that were long since prepared by the Azura Road Master and Immortal Sovereign. Not only did they do this to lift up and train their talented descendants within the 33 heavens, but they also wanted to choose a descendant that possessed the ability to simultaneously refine these two great worlds. Moreover, they also planned to accumulate the laws, destiny, and experiences of countless peerless geniuses to have the strength of the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe reach the peak. All of these plans were ultimately created to resist the demon god's tomb master. This chess game spanned the heavens and earth, and now it was reaching its grand finale. On one side stood the demon god's tomb master, and on the other side stood Lin Ming. And behind Lin Ming also stood the Azura Road Master and Immortal Sovereign. For 10 billion years, it was unknown how many generations had put in their full efforts, it was unknown how many masters of the 33 heavens died in various battlefields, it was unknown how many geniuses entered the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, and perhaps they perished, and perhaps they also became outstanding existences that achieved great things. These people all had their own legends and stories. But the passing of years was ruthless and callous. These people eventually died,
and even the jade slips that recorded their histories shattered to pieces. In the end, these people all became nothing but grains of sand in the endless flow of time. However, it was exactly this endless sand that composed the history of the 33 heavens. This history might be glorious, it might be humiliating, it might be righteous, it might be filled with blood. But no matter what, this history carried with it the will of all their ancestors. And that was to carry onwards. Slowly, ever so slowly, Lin Ming clenched his fists. This final fate all had to be shouldered by him. Every wisp of destiny that was marked in the Azura Road and Akashic Dream universe, every single law, everything contained the will and wishes of the countless ancestors that had preceded him, and this was something that would be carried forth by him. He already sat in front of the chess game. There was no route to escape. All he could do was desperately fight and fight again. Lin Ming, it is time to begin. This period of seclusion will continue for a long, long time. At the start, I will be able to act as your protector, but in the final critical phase, I will have no choice but to put all my effort into helping you refine the two great worlds. At that time, I will not be able to divert much strength into protecting the Azura Road and Akashic Dream universe. We must grasp the time before us and complete this before the Demon God's Tomb Master finishes his own period of seclusion. First, you must perfect your 9 revolutions of reincarnation as well as open the last Tao Palace of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace. After Lin Ming fused together the Heavenly Sutra and Holy Scripture, his comprehensions in the Holy Scripture laws had reached heights no less than Shang Mei's.
Now all he lacked was time.
As long as he had time, then with his current boundary he could complete his 9th reincarnation, passing through 9 deaths and 9 lives. However, even though Lin Ming had these lofty goals and ideals in his heart, there were still gloomy clouds that muddled his thoughts.
The Azura Road Master sighed. Lin Ming, I know you are worried about your wife, however. I am unable to leave the Azura Road, and your strength is insufficient to save her. All you can do is believe in her destiny and believe in her, and hope that she has another fortuitous encounter. The Azura Road Master understood what Lin Ming was thinking. However, this was the final step of a plan that had been laid out 10 billion years ago and also involved a final war that would involve all life in the 33 heavens. In this situation, Lin Ming had no choice he could make. I understand, Lin Ming grit his teeth as he spoke. Perhaps Shang Mei really might have her own destiny. At the very least, she was still alive right now. The Azura Road Master said, this seclusion will continue for a long time. Refining 2 great worlds is not easy, and isn't any simpler than the Demon God's Tomb Master fusing together with the Demon God's Tomb.
So, this period of seclusion will far surpass anything you have ever experienced. Because this will continue for such a long time, there are some matters I will resolve for you. I will help you subdue the good fortune Saint Sovereign that you have sealed away so that he will faithfully follow your orders and protect your family. However, after I subdue him, his boundary will drop a great deal. There is also the remnant soul of an Empyrean deeply slumbering within your inner world. I will awaken and restore him, and will consider this as having completed the karmic ties between you two.
The black dragon within your inner world, your children, your wives, the human leader Divine Dream, as well as all other overlords of the 33 heavens with potential can enter the space of the final trial and undergo the final trial. They may even accept some of the inheritances left behind from ancient times within the heavenly Tao rules of the 2 great worlds. To them, this will be a great lucky chance. The Azura Road and Akashic Dream universe had been laid out for 10 billion years, and now it was time for these 2 great worlds to display their true value. All the geniuses of the 33 heavens, all of Lin Ming's family and friends, they would all be able to obtain massive advantages. It had to be known that 10 billion years ago, there were numerous true divinities in the 33 heavens. But in the current 33 heavens the level of talent was withered and weak. However, the Azura Road and Akashic Dream universe gathered the destinies and accumulations of innumerable geniuses for the last 10 billion years. For the next several thousand years or even tens of thousands of years, all of these accumulations would be released so that the lives of the 33 heavens would be able to soar to all new heights. At that time, it wouldn't be strange if crowds of true divinities were to appear once again. Chapter 22-28, The Times Change. Time passed.
At the entrance of the dark abyss, Xiang Mei and Fishy had stayed together in the Amethyst Origin crystal's inner space for 30 years already. Every now and then during these 30 years, Xiang Mei could feel energy passing from the Eternal Wall. After the Soul Emperor left his energy within the Eternal Wall's inner energy structure, it took root and began to germinate, tenaciously growing. Xiang Mei didn't know what method the Soul Emperor used, but the energy mark he planted actually wasn't able to be recognized by the Eternal Wall. It grew like a malignant cancer, spreading outwards. If this continued, then a small part of the Eternal Wall's energy structure would fall under the control of the Soul Emperor. At that time, by joining forces within and without, the Eternal Wall would sooner or later fall.
After another 5 years, the Soul Emperor's energy mark exploded for the first time.
This matter occurred suddenly and without any hint at all. At the time, Xiang Mei was closed up in cultivation and Fishy was lackadaisically eating the energy crystals condensed in the amethyst space. But then, a sudden shaking within the amethyst space caused Xiang Mei to awaken from her meditation.
These vibrations were far more violent than when the Soul Emperor first attempted to tear open the space channel. Xiang Mei blanched.
She reached out her sense to probe the Eternal Wall's situation, and her complexion became increasingly solemn. During these years, Xiang Mei had managed to slowly flush out the various seals that the Soul Emperor had placed within her. After all, most of these seals only had short-term effects, and with her strength she could always push them out of her body as long as she slowly erased them with her energy. Now her strength had been restored to its peak state and she could clearly feel the internal state of the Eternal Wall's grand array formation. The Soul Emperor had allowed his energy mark to grow for 30 years. What the Soul Emperor should have done just now was lay down a great array formation outside, and combine with this energy to explode it, blowing up a part of the Eternal Wall's energy structure. After the explosion, there was still a part of the Soul Emperor's energy left within that would survive in the Eternal Wall's array formation. This should be an attempt by the Soul Emperor to study the energy he left behind and how he could use it to completely break open the Eternal Wall. Fishy, the Eternal Wall cannot stop the Soul Emperor. He has studied the Eternal Wall for innumerable years, and now because of me, a flaw has appeared in this originally perfect wall. At the least we have 1,000 years and at the most we have several thousand years, but the Eternal Wall will most certainly be shattered open by the Soul Emperor.
Xiang Mei sighed.
Even with Fishy's sudden appearance she still wasn't able to change her fate. Fishy tilted her head, unsure of what to do. For these past 30 years, the two of them had spent their time within the Amethyst Origin crystal together and they had extremely good sentiments towards each other. Since Fishy couldn't figure out what to do, she simply held Xiang Mei's hand to comfort her. Holding Fishy's hand, Xiang Mei wasn't sure what she felt in her heart. She gently traced Fishy's cheek and said with sadness, "Fishy, you tried to rescue Big Sister, but Big Sister only managed to drag you into this mess."
Fishy grabbed Xiang Mei's hand, saying, "It's fine. Didn't Big Sister say that we have several thousand years left? Perhaps there is still something we can do. If Big Sister can make another breakthrough, then we might be able to escape. And even if all our efforts come to nothing, that doesn't matter anyways," Fishy earnestly said.
Breakthrough, Xiang Mei shook her head. In the Azura Forbidden Land she had fused with the remnant soul of her past life and had awakened the majority of her past memories. With it, she obtained many precious experiences, laws, and cultivation methods. These comprehensions and experiences needed time to be digested. If she were to go into seclusion for several thousand years, then her strength would surely rise up to a whole new level. If there wasn't an accident, she could easily reach the peak of middle true divinity and even the upper true divinity boundary. Even so, she wouldn't be a match for the Soul Emperor. The Soul Emperor was simply too formidable, he was absolutely invincible amongst true divinities.
"Fishy, are you afraid of dying?"
Xiang Mei softly asked, looking into Fishy's eyes. Fishy shook her head. In truth, she had already lived for a long, long time, and there were many matters she couldn't remember from her glorious past. She didn't fear death, what she feared was loneliness and slowly forgetting the past.
Then listen to Big Sister.
From this point on, Big Sister will go into seclusion to try and break through to the next boundary.
As for you, you can begin saving your energy so that the Amethyst Origin crystal is in its most powerful state.
The Soul Emperor still needs a long period of time before he can open the Eternal Wall. We will have enough time to make preparations. And when the Soul Emperor opens the Eternal Wall, the truth is that this will be the Soul Emperor's weakest moment. Shang Mei knew that two of the Demon God's Tomb Master's avatars, Deep and Flood, should be staying in the Emperor Bone Sea to suppress the changes that were occurring there.
Thus, they shouldn't be facing them. As long as she faced the Soul Emperor alone, then she was fine. If the Soul Emperor was in his peak state, Shang Mei was naturally far from being his match. But the moment that the Eternal Wall broke open, the Soul Emperor would surely have consumed a tremendous amount of energy. When the Soul Emperor tried to open the Eternal Wall in the past, he had captured her as a blood sacrifice. And when he was carrying out the final ritual, he had dug out one of his ribs, combining his bone's blood essence with the array formation he laid down to complete the last steps. Now the Soul Emperor didn't have Shang Mei to use as a blood sacrifice and could only depend on the energy mark that he had planted in the Amethyst Origin crystal. If he wanted to open the Eternal Wall using that, then he might need to pay an even greater price. If so, then this would be her only chance. She would nurture her strength while biding her time. When she reached the peak of middle true divinity, she would face the exhausted Soul Emperor and even have Fishy and the Amethyst Origin crystal supporting her. With the Amethyst Origin crystal, she could give the Soul Emperor a disastrous blow. This was Shang Mei's plan. But she also knew that the chances of her plan succeeding were near zero. But no matter how unlikely her chances were, she still had to attempt it and put forth her full effort in doing so. Because this was her last chance. Although she might not be able to avoid her own death in the end, before she died she would tear off a chunk of meat from the Soul Emperor and heavily wound him once more. She might be able to delay his fusion with the Demon God's tomb and give Lin Ming and Joer a long period of time to grow stronger. Time flew forwards like an arrow, ruthless shooting towards one direction. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow, but it would never turn back. Within the Azura Sea's Amethyst Heavenly Palace, the flow of time was sped up. 1 year outside was equivalent to 10 years within the Amethyst Heavenly Palace. Upon reaching the boundary of the Azura Roadmaster, one could definitely create a perfect time enchantment where the laws within weren't twisted and was still suitable for cultivating. Tragic Death Valley was one such example. However, this increased pace of time didn't work for everything. Lin Ming's cultivation of his reincarnations, his breakthrough in the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, these things could be done within a time enchantment. But to simultaneously refine the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, this could not. This was because fusing together the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe required a height of laws that even surpassed the comprehensions of the Azura Roadmaster. In this situation, if the Azura Roadmaster wished to create a time enchantment and have its laws continue in their originally perfect and complete state, that was just impossible. Thus, when the time truly came for Lin Ming to refine the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, time would pass at an equal speed to the outside world. He would be placed in a race against time with the Soul Emperor. At this time, in the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, Lin Ming had already experienced 5,000 years. But only 500 years passed in the outside world. For these 500 years, the human Empyreans and true divinities did not idly waste their time away. They had established a new base in the skies above the Azura Sea. All important figures of humanity had moved to the Azura Sea. The outstanding individuals amongst them were able to enter the final trial. The end times were approaching. Ink and Clear opened up all resources within the Azura Road's final trial, and how much one could obtain would depend on their respective abilities. Afterwards, even the elites of the saints came to the Azura Sea. Beneath the guidance of the current leader of the saints, soaring feather god king, many saint influences began to establish themselves in the Azura Sea.
They created large array formations, opened their own minor worlds, and brought in their heavenly palaces. The geniuses of the saints, Fairy Blue Lotus, High Sun, Dark Moon, all entered the final trial to seek out their own lucky chances. Everyone who entered the final trial was able to obtain their own corresponding completion percentage. These geniuses were all incredible individuals that possessed their own pride and arrogance. In particular, with two races living together, they all chased towards the highest completion percentage, pushing each other further up through competition. Slowly, the Azura Sea became the core focal point of the children of the 33 heavens.
However, the humans and saints knew that these prosperous times couldn't continue forever. Probably in 10,000 years or less, the great calamity would arrive. Whether or not they could continue onwards or be annihilated here, everything would depend on the man deep in seclusion within the amethyst heavenly palace. He was the final bet of the 33 heavens. And what he faced was a gamble he could not afford to lose. Chapter 22-29, Unity. Whoosh! A giant space gate appeared in the skies above the Azura Sea. It constantly expanded before finally fully opening. As this space gate appeared, the waters of the Azura Sea began to rise in fierce and turbulent waves. The elites of the saints and humanity flew out amongst the great waves. Although each one was wounded, they were all in good spirits and beamed with smiles. Another crowd of elites had completed their final trial. They obtained treasures and inheritances from the final trial space. Compared to their original backgrounds, the rank of these new inheritances was completely disproportional, a gap as great as the heavens and earth. What is your completion percentage? A young elite excitedly asked after just having left the final trial. Mine is 76%, what about you? 78%. How fierce! I passed 75% this time and thought that was already amazing, but I never thought that Brother Joe would have 78%. I'm really sweating with shame here. Several youths congratulated and flattered each other. Because they had all grown stronger, they were all in good moods. Even if others had surpassed them, they still sincerely praised them. That's Senior Apprentice Sister Blue Lotus. A sharp-eyed youth saw a blue figure flash through the rising waves of the Azura Sea. That's right, Senior Apprentice Sister Blue Lotus also re-entered the final trial this time. This should be her third time entering the final trial. I have no idea what results Senior Apprentice Sister Blue Lotus has. The last two times she underwent the final trial, her completion percentages were 87 and 88. Perhaps this time she was able to reach 90. Senior Apprentice Sister Blue Lotus is amazing. Several youths discussed together. As they did, several other surrounding individuals also began to chime in. When it came to the saints, Fairy Blue Lotus had an extremely high level of fame and prestige. Originally, the slightly older Good Fortune Saint Sun had been able to suppress Fairy Blue Lotus, but now that the Good Fortune Saint Sun had died, Fairy Blue Lotus naturally became the elder senior sister to every Saint Race Jr. As these words of praise fell into Fairy Blue Lotus's ears, they actually felt incomparably grating. She stopped in her steps and turned towards that group of youths. Just what nonsense are you speaking? Hurry up and go train. Do you think that it is amazing if you just entered the final trial and obtained a completion percentage in the 70s? Compared to 10,000 years ago, the difficulty of the final trial has already dropped by a great deal, and yet with such an easy difficulty you still cannot obtain at least 80. Fairy Blue Lotus's voice was cold like ice, causing these boisterously chattering youths to shrink back. All of them didn't dare to speak anymore. Indeed, in order to help the human and saint elites obtain a higher completion percentage, Ink and Clear had deliberately lowered the difficulty of the final trial by a little bit. Even so, Fairy Blue Lotus wasn't able to obtain a 90% completion. During this final trial her completion percent was 89, just 1% off from reaching 90. But, to overcome this 1% was not easy at all.
Fairy Blue Lotus also knew that when Lin Ming first entered the final trial, his completion percent was 92. In the past, Lin Ming was also only at the Divine Lord realm. The Divine Lord realm was not a suitable realm for participating in the final trial. Afterwards, Lin Ming completed his grand reincarnation art and came to the final trial again. Due to the Emperor Jades, he perfectly completed the final trial and reached 100%. Fairy Blue Lotus didn't possess the Emperor Jades, so it was naturally impossible for her to achieve 100%. But in a situation where the difficulty had already been suppressed, it left her saddened that she still couldn't achieve 90%. She estimated that if she were to come to the final trial 10,000 years ago, then with the difficulty of that time her own completion percentage would be several points lower.
Lin Huang's completion percent has reached 92, he has set a new record. A deep and sonorous voice echoed out near Fairy Blue Lotus's ears. She turned to see a large fellow flying towards her with a petite girl sitting on his shoulders. They were the brother and sister pair, High Sun and Dark Moon. These two individuals had a completion percent that was 5 points lower than Fairy Blue Lotus's. 92%, Fairy Blue Lotus wasn't surprised. The first one to break past 90% was Lin Huang. Fairy Blue Lotus had watched Lin Huang's training these past years. People said that Lin Huang was the son of Lin Ming and Xiao Moshan and simultaneously possessed the rare Azura bloodline and God-Beast bloodlines. There was no need to speak of his talent. He also had an incredible amount of resources to freely utilize as well as the ability to study any peak inheritances he so desired. With such strength, a high completion percentage was what he should have achieved. If he were to be surpassed by others, then he really would be seen as a joke. However, Fairy Blue Lotus knew that Lin Huang's progress relied on not just his talent but also his own hard work. He had always maintained the title of being the number one figure of the younger generation, and people would always praise him from behind, saying that he was worthy of being Lin Ming's son. But these results were all due to his unceasing training from childhood to adulthood, and had been exchanged with innumerable life and death battles. To withstand such pressure wasn't easy even for Lin Huang. Fairy Blue Lotus turned to see Lin Huang flying away from the turbulent waves. She couldn't help but sympathize with him. "Big brother, I'm going to the Great Desolate, do you want to go?" At this time, a giant black dragon flew into the skies above the Azura Sea. With its two wings extended outwards, it nearly blocked out the sun and skies. A black-clothed young girl rode atop the black dragon's neck, waving towards Lin Huang. She was Lin Ming and Shang Mei's daughter, Azure. Seeing Jor, Fairy Blue Lotus sighed with emotion. When Jor first entered the final trial, her completion rate was only 80%, this result couldn't be considered too high. Jor was different from Lin Huang. She had been accompanied by Lin Ming and Shang Mei growing up and had obtained the best guidance from them. When Lin Ming and Shang Mei broke into true divinity, she had also been baptized with their laws. However, what Jor lacked was actual combat experience. Although her perception was astonishingly high and her cultivation progressed rapidly, her strength was actually somewhat lacking. Like flowers grown in a greenhouse, although they were beautiful when they bloomed within, they weren't able to withstand the harsh winds and rains of the outside. The originally mischievous and lazy Jor saw her own completion percentage and silently departed for the Great Desolate. She trained in the Great Desolate, fighting desperately with the vicious beasts there. No one knew what Jor experienced in the Great Desolate. All they knew was that after a short 100 years she returned, and when she re-entered the final trial once more, her completion percent had reached 87. Such a rate of growth was astonishing. Fairy Blue Lotus knew that even though Jor often smiled and appeared happy, the truth was that her burdens were no less than Lin Huang's. Jor originally had a playful personality, but that changed when her mother was captured by the Soul Emperor so many years ago. Although it was said that her mother is still alive, she feared that her situation wasn't too optimistic, otherwise she would have returned already. Jor's silent efforts were all for her mother. "Jor, I have no need to go. As the Great Desolate stands, there is nothing there that can challenge me. You go by yourself and be careful. Don't try to show off. Jor, what is your completion percent this time? I just reached 90, Jor said, a bit depressed. But as this voice fell into the ears of others, including Fairy Blue Lotus, it left them feeling somewhat depressed. From 80 to 87, then from 87 to 90, Jor's speed of progression was too terrifying. After all, the final trial was not a test of one's strength, but of one's talent and potential. If a martial artist grew stronger, their completion percentage wouldn't necessarily become higher. Instead, because of one's increased age, their completion percentage might fall instead. But for Jor, because she was growing stronger far beyond her age, this was the reason why her completion percentage would rise by 10 whole points. If it were anyone else, they would already be thanking the heavens and earth for an increase of 1 to 2 percentage points in 1,000 years. And it seemed that Jor's potential had yet to be fully unearthed. Later on, it would be possible for Jor to obtain a 95% completion. Big brother, I'm leaving first then. Jor slapped the black dragon's back. The black dragon flapped its wings and shot up into the skies. Even the clouds above were blown away by the violent winds. Lin Huang looked at Jor's back and a faint smile appeared on his lips. He watched as Jor left and then turned to fly into the Azure Sea. During this venture into the final trial, he had gained some enlightenments and needed to go to the Amethyst Heavenly Palace. The Amethyst Heavenly Palace was also where Lin Ming had gone into seclusion. Lin Ming's cultivation could not be disturbed and no one was allowed to take a step into the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, they could only cultivate around it. If one cultivated here, they would fall under the 110-time enchantment and save a great deal of time. Divine Dream, Emperor Sakya, Astral Vault, Soaring Feather, as well as numerous human and saint Empyreans all cultivated here. Chapter 2230, Changes. The truth was that 10,000 years ago, before the great catastrophe arrived, whether it was humans or saints, they slacked on their cultivation after reaching the Empyrean realm. The first reason was because the Empyrean realm was far too distant from the true divinity realm. Even if they cultivated diligently, their efforts were likely to come to nothing. The second reason was because their resources and inheritances were lacking. 10 billion years ago, when the martial arts civilization of the 33 heavens was at its most glorious and prosperous times, it was far less difficult for an Empyrean to reach true divinity, and many true divinity influences would help those with potential complete this final step as long as they put in their due diligence. But afterwards, when the various races of the 33 heavens fell into steep decline, the total number of true divinities within the 33 heavens could be counted on 2 hands, and this was divided amongst the different races. In this situation, if an Empyrean wished to cultivate to true divinity, they would basically have to rely on themselves, and no matter how much effort they put in, their work wouldn't come to fruition. But the present was different. Around the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, there was the personal teachings of Ink and Clear. Moreover, in these past years, all of the Azura Road Masters accumulated resources, everything that the previous guardians of the Azura Road had collected, it was all taken out without reserve for the many Empyreans and true divinities to use. There was no need to speak of cultivation method inheritances. Not to mention the vast accumulation of inheritances gathered in the Azura Road, the various human and saint influences also put forth their own inheritances so that everyone could share and exchange. Inheritances were indeed precious. If one's race didn't even exist, what was the point of defending these inheritances so fastidiously? With all of these factors added together, the martial artists of humanity and the saints began to cultivate with an unprecedented level of heated enthusiasm. Naturally, their cultivation speed also rose by a great deal. There were even some outstanding individuals who had high hopes of breaking into true divinity. This was the true divinity boundary. Once, it had been nothing but a wistful dream that could only look on from afar, but now that they realized they could break through these shackles and attain it themselves, how could they not be excited? As the human and saint race Empyreans put forth their full hearts and minds into cultivation, Jor had already ridden the great black dragon into the skies above the great desolate. Jor held onto the black dragon's neck. Facing the howling desert winds,
her long black hair flew about her like strands of silk. The blood-red glow from the sun covered her skin like an intoxicating blush. But beneath that blush, her delicate face was filled with a grim and hardened determination.
"Little Black, fly into the deeps!" Jior shouted out loud. "Ayo!" The black dragon roared. Its two wings stretched out as it cut through the skyline.
One girl, one dragon, the two of them soared through the fire-red clouds, slowly blending into the crimson setting sun and disappearing from sight. All that was left over was the distant howl of the dragon, echoing into the horizon for a long time. Time passed, marching forwards without pause. Ever since Lin Ming began his seclusion, 2,800 years had passed. No one knew what Lin Ming's situation was, but they didn't dare to waste time in their cultivation. And at this time, a great change was occurring within the Spiritas.
Overnight, the entire Spiritas race descended into chaos. 2 Spiritas true divinities led 10 peak Empyreans to go to the dark abyss.
As this news spread out, the human and saint martial artists felt their hearts sink. In the past, the leader of the Spiritas had his body seized. Then, the demon god's tomb master appeared with the identity of the Soul Emperor to rule over the Spiritas. The several strongest masters of the Spiritas race were controlled by the Soul Emperor, and if it wasn't for the Soul Emperor being limited in the number of people that he could control, then he likely would have taken control of every Empyrean amongst the Spiritas.
The changes occurring amongst the Spiritas left a dark cloud of gloom hovering over their hearts. This was especially true for the Spiritas martial artists. For instance, Empyrean Divine Mist.
Empyrean Divine Mist had awoken around the time that Lin Ming went into seclusion. Then, he began restoring his soul around the heavenly Amethyst Palace, and now his soul had become increasingly stable. He came from the Azura Road, but when he learned of the changes occurring within the Spiritas of the 33 heavens, he still sighed deeply with emotion.
In these chaotic times, what would the future of the Spiritas be?
Divine Mist, in these past years your soul has become stable enough with the aid of appropriate soul recovery items. At the time, young master had instructed us that after your soul has stabilized, we should give you an appropriate body and also help you seize it. After Lin Ming went into seclusion to refine 2 great worlds, Ink and Clear had already changed the way they called Lin Ming to young master. Empyrean Divine Mist had shown graciousness to Lin Ming in the past. And since it was impossible for Lin Ming to reform Divine Mist's mortal body, he could only help him seize a similar one. After seizing a body there would be many drawbacks, but it was still much better than remaining a soul form.
You have 2 choices. One is Soul Emperor Divine Void. And the other is the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Ink and Clear's words caused Empyrean Divine Mist's heart to shake.
These 2 bodies were both at the true divinity level, in particular the
Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, he had reached the peak of true divinity. Soul Emperor Divine Void was Divine Mist's enemy.
100 years ago, Ink and Clear had captured Soul Emperor Divine Void and had sealed up his spiritual sea and cultivation.
As for the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, there was even less to mention.
After his great battle with Lin Ming he had suffered severe losses and also had his avatar of famine and Grand Mist Spirit Bead taken away. His cultivation boundary had dropped 1 level, and after being controlled by the Azura Road Master, his cultivation dropped even further.
Now, he was somewhere between an upper and middle true divinity.
Originally it would have been impossible for Divine Mist to seize the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's body. But, because the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's soul had been controlled, it was not possible for Divine Mist to slowly refine the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's spiritual sea.
After listening to Ink and Clear's words, Divine Mist sighed.
He said, I will choose to seize the body of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, as for Divine Void, let him go. After so many years passed, the hatred in Divine Mist's heart had already faded away, becoming a shadow of what it had been. With the great calamity imminent, Divine Mist didn't want to sentence a master who was on the side of the 33 heavens to death, just because of some past enmity. In fact, this was also hard for Ink and Clear.
Good. Ink and Clear faintly smiled. Then we will assist you in seizing the body.
After you seize his body, it will require you a great deal of time to thoroughly refine the good fortune Saint Sovereign's divine soul. Even when you manage to do so, it will be impossible to further increase your boundary in the future.
Do you understand all of this?
Divine Mist calmly said. To be able to obtain a mortal body, and also one that was so formidable, he no longer had any wild dreams. If it weren't for him luckily meeting Lin Ming in the past within tragic Death Valley, he feared he would have long since exhausted himself and died.
3 years later, some Spiritas martial artists also arrived at the Azura Sea.
Ink and Clear welcomed all of these new arrivals.
Slowly, 3,000 years passed from when Lin Ming entered seclusion.
From this point on, beneath the planning of Ink and Clear, the mortals and low-level martial artists of the Azura Road began to evacuate. Everything was being done in preparation for the final war that would occur once Lin Ming left seclusion. And in the dark abyss, Xiang Mei and Fishy were also preparing for their final stand. 3,000 years ago the Eternal Wall had already started to break apart.
Horrifying cracks appeared in the boundless black earth.
These cracks were like the maws of wild beasts, capable of swallowing everything into the endless abyss. The Soul Emperor stood above the devastated and cracked earth, his hair scattered and his filthy eyes overflowing with killing intent.
Chapter 2231 The Eternal Wall Breaks.
The Eternal Wall had already sealed away the dark abyss for 10 billion years, like a peerless vicious beast that was chained down with heavy chains. Because of these chains, the Soul Emperor's avatar had been separated from reuniting with the other avatars. For all these years, the Eternal Wall was a great stone that pressed down on the Soul Emperor, leaving him gasping for breath. Today, this great stone would finally be broken. Once that occurred, the 33 heavens would link back together with the dark abyss and all lives in existence would be within his control. He would rule the world for 100 billion years, 1 trillion years. The Soul Emperor wanted to fuse with the Demon God's tomb, and the Demon God's tomb was like an ancient great beast with an incomparably greedy and horrifying appetite. In order to make the Demon God's tomb an eternal existence that would grow ever stronger, able to resist the great shattering of the universe several times over, then the Soul Emperor needed to give the Demon God's tomb enough nourishment.
And just the dark abyss was not enough. With the bountiful 33 heavens, the abyssals could grow stronger and produce more and more descendants.
And the native peoples of the 33 heavens could be taken as captives and reared to become alternative nourishment. 3,000 years had passed and the energy storms in the skies above the Eternal Wall had already come to a stop. After destroying a part of the Eternal Wall's energy structure, the Soul Emperor was able to set up a large array formation to sever the connection between the world's energy and the Eternal Wall.
Let it begin.
The Soul Emperor revealed a maniacal laugh. He smashed his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Then, with his blood as the ink, he began to draw a totem upon the cracked earth of the Eternal Wall.
The land was already marked with vicious and fierce cracks.
As the Soul Emperor's blood essence passed through these cracks, it floated upwards, as if it were a drawing within the void. As the Soul Emperor started to draw this grand array, his complexion became increasingly pale. 3,000 years ago, in his battle against Lin Ming, the Soul Emperor had gone from the appearance of a youth to that of a withered man in the fading years of his life. It was clear that this battle had done a considerable amount of damage to the Soul Emperor. So many years had passed and the Soul Emperor still hadn't recovered. His body was as thin and gaunt as firewood and his eyes were like dying embers. Now, as he was using his blood essence as ink to draw up this great array diagram, it made him look like a terminally ill old man, about to die at any moment.
Fishy, it's begun. Within the Eternal Wall, Xiang Mei awakened from her meditation.
Her eyes shimmered in the dark, seeming to see through the layers of amethyst walls and seeing the array diagram that the Soul Emperor was drawing up. The energy has started to become chaotic. The Soul Emperor is burning his blood essence to make the final preparations. The Eternal Wall was already riddled with cracks and flaws. The Soul Emperor's strength could easily seep through the ground into the nearby amethyst origin crystal, thus Xiang Mei could clearly feel him.
Fishy nodded. For these last 3,000 years she hadn't been idling about either.
Although she wasn't suited for cultivating the martial arts laws of the 33 heavens, she still continued to train herself so that her divine soul would fuse together more perfectly with the amethyst origin crystal. This made it easier for her to control the amethyst origin crystal, making it nearly her instinct. Whether it was Fishy or Xiang Mei, they had spent these million days and nights constantly preparing for this last struggle. Success or failure, life or death, all would come down to this final bet.
Are you afraid?
Xiang Mei gently smoothed Fishy's bangs, her heart aching. She didn't want this naive and kind-hearted Fishy to be involved in this sort of life or death battle. And she also knew that in this struggle against the Soul Emperor, their chances of winning were nearly zero. The best-case situation was that they would be able to flee with their lives. But as Xiang Mei recalled all of the Soul Emperor's innumerable methods, she felt her heart sink.
To merely escape from this old demon would be a task fraught with countless sufferings and dangers. Xiang Mei had already prepared for the worst possible scenario.
When she determined she was unable to escape, she would leave the amethyst space and burn her life in its entirety, completely exploding. With her peak middle true divinity cultivation and her combat efficiency that would allow her to kill a peak true divinity master, then if she were to explode herself in front of the Soul Emperor she could surely cause heavy losses to him. Xiang Mei didn't think she would be able to kill the Soul Emperor, but she might be able to win a slim chance of survival for Fishy. In these past years Xiang Mei had learned of Fishy and Lin Ming's experiences together. She sincerely felt love and affection for this little girl and her bizarre upbringing. She didn't want her to die because of her own troubles.
Bang! The amethyst space suddenly shook.
The energy structure began to fracture and burst apart. Cracks spread throughout the eternal wall like a spider's web, it would soon break apart.
Xiang Mei remained calm as if she didn't feel anything at all.
Since she had already firmed her determination, then even if the Soul Emperor were to directly enter the amethyst space and stand before her, she still wouldn't fear anything.
Bang! The space suddenly shook again. Violent explosions seethed and surged outside the amethyst space.
Even if Xiang Mei didn't use her sense, she could still imagine how terrifying the waves of energy were outside. This was a grand array formation that the Soul Emperor had formed using his blood essence. By gathering the strength of the world of the demon god's tomb as well as the heaven and earth origin energy of the dark abyss, he was launching his final strike against the eternal wall. The sounds of explosions became increasingly loud and dense. From above, the array formation that the Soul Emperor created was like a giant and evil eye that floated above the blackened earth. This ice constantly eroded away at the land, as if it would swallow it all. The waves of energy became increasingly fierce. Xiang Mei sensed that an irresistible strength was slowly tearing open the eternal wall. It wanted to forcefully pull out the core of the eternal wall, the amethyst origin crystal. The connection between the amethyst origin crystal and eternal wall was being forcibly drawn apart. At this moment Xiang Mei's sense of time became incredibly slow. In the turbulent chaos all around her, she had to grasp hold of that fleeting opportunity. Xiang Mei had already fused together with the memories of her previous life, and the eternal wall was also laid down with the joint efforts of the Azura Roadmaster and her previous life. Because of this, Xiang Mei had a clear understanding into the energy structure of the eternal wall, and she could also make use of this energy. Otherwise, by relying on just her and Fishy, it would be difficult to cause heavy damage to the Soul Emperor. As the eternal wall broke apart more and more, violent currents of energy gushed out towards Xiang Mei and Fishy. The amethyst origin crystal was like a boat that was being smashed by giant waves in the sea, and had completely lost its anchoring with the eternal wall.
Now is the time, attack!
Xiang Mei's eyes flashed with a cold brilliance. All of her strength erupted at once.
Fishy didn't hesitate as she went all out.
Joining together with Xiang Mei, the two of them took control of the amethyst origin crystal and attacked the Soul Emperor. With Xiang Mei's strength and Fishy as the medium, the two joined with the amethyst origin crystal, allowing its speed to reach the peak. The void between Shang Mei and the Soul Emperor was flooded with a horrifying pressure and wild waves of energy. But this pressure couldn't stop the path of the amethyst origin crystal. Surrounded by this pressure, if one was familiar with the Eternal Wall's energy structure and could make full use of the laws, they could even use this pressure to increase their strength and enhance the impact force of the amethyst origin crystal. This was like a person using strength to grab hold of a slippery bar of soap. The more strength they used, the greater the pressure would be and the faster the soap would fly out of their hands. And the current Shang Mei and Fishy were like this. Not only did they pour in all of their strength, but they also borrowed the world strength that gushed out from the torn Eternal Wall, all in order to initiate this final fatal strike against the Soul Emperor. Seeing the amethyst origin crystal hurtle towards him, the Soul Emperor wasn't surprised at all. He sneered, "You are someone I raised myself, how could I not know your thoughts?" The Soul Emperor knew that Shang Mei wouldn't idly sit around and wait for death in her final moments. He had already sealed away a portion of his strength in his body. The reason he did so was to deal with Shang Mei's desperate counterattack after he drew his Grand Array formation and fell to his weakest state. Pang! Energy erupted from within the Soul Emperor's body. The Soul Emperor's palm came crashing down upon the amethyst origin crystal. In that moment, the strength locked within the Soul Emperor's body was unsealed. From the Soul Emperor's hand, a black vortex appeared. The world strength of the demon god's tomb came roaring out. Bang! The energy flow violently collided with the amethyst origin crystal and exploded. It was like giant blood-red lotuses were blooming atop the Eternal Wall. The Eternal Wall was thoroughly torn apart, turned into countless fragments. And in this titanic wave of energy, the amethyst origin crystal was sent flying away. Within the amethyst space, Shang Mei bore the brunt of the energy impact and spat out a mouthful of blood. Beside her, Fishy also paled. The Soul Emperor had already been prepared for their final desperate strike. And although it had been difficult for the Soul Emperor to withstand this blow, the damage to Shang Mei and Fishy was even greater. Chapter 2232, A Different World. One's fighting spirit was aroused by the first call, faded by the second, and then exhausted by the third. If the first strike wasn't able to heavily wound the Soul Emperor, then the following battle would become far more difficult. You have really left me surprised. In the distant void, the Soul Emperor's hair was scattered all about him. A macabre smile spread across his features. In these years of seclusion, Shang Mei's strength had risen by an astronomical degree. In addition to Fishy and the purple card, when they gathered all of their potential to attack together, even though the Soul Emperor was prepared, he had still been injured. The arm he used to block the purple card had already broken and was now hanging limp at a strange angle. But although the Soul Emperor had been wounded, a happy expression spread wildly across his face. I expected you to take advantage of my weakest moment to risk your life in a desperate attack, but I didn't expect your strike to be so powerful. You have progressed far too quickly. In the past, I only wanted to train you to open the Eternal Wall, but I never imagined I would create such a perfect work of art. If you didn't betray me, just how wonderful would that have been? The Soul Emperor's voice overflowed with killing intent. Although he thought it was a pity that he would have to destroy Shang Mei, he didn't have any intention of showing mercy or forgiveness. And ruining the most perfect thing could also bring him pleasure. Ka ka ka. The Soul Emperor's broken arm was rapidly regenerating. At the same time, beneath the Soul Emperor, the Eternal Wall continued to break down and explode. Violent flows of energy smashed into his body, but the Soul Emperor seemed mindless of it all. His gaze and sense were still completely locked onto the amethyst origin crystal that was not too far away. He knew that Shang Mei still had strength remaining and wouldn't give up here. She would continue attacking. But her attacks wouldn't have any great effect on him. This was the disparity between their boundaries. The Soul Emperor moved towards the amethyst origin crystal, one step at a time. With the Soul Emperor as the center, a force field projection of the demon god's tomb shot out, blocking the surrounding void. Bang! The explosions all around the Soul Emperor became increasingly fierce and crazy. Beneath his feet, the eternal wall was falling downwards. Without the support of the force field, the dark earth collapsed beneath its own weight. It began to fall into the dark abyss in massive chunks. This apocalyptic sight was as if the end of times had come. A terrifying energy erupted from the eternal wall. Originally, the eternal wall was linked together with the void. And now, because the eternal wall had collapsed, a massive chunk of space was torn apart and an unexpected scene occurred. A spatial fissure over 1,000 miles long appeared after the space tour. And within this spatial fissure, the aura of the world was hazy and ethereal, as if it were a completely different world. Seeing this massive spatial fissure, the Soul Emperor was stunned. This world was clearly different from the world of the demon god's tomb, and the Soul Emperor also felt that this wasn't the 33 heavens.
Such a world was hiding within the dark abyss? How could this be possible?
But at the same time, as Xiang Mei saw this within the amethyst space, tumultuous waves rose up in her heart. She had seen this piece of world before. She didn't know what this world was or where it had come from. But over 10,000 years ago, she had discovered the entrance to this world by accident. Within this world, all rules were different. These rules seemed completely independent from the system that constituted the 33 heavens and dark abyss. In truth, the dark abyss and 33 heavens came from the same roots. The dark abyss was the predecessor of the 33 heavens, the remains of the previous universal era. From this aspect, the two worlds were originally one body.
But this other world was actually completely different.
Xiang Mei didn't know why the entrance to such a world would appear in the dark abyss, nor did she know what it was.
After she accidentally discovered this world, she hid away the secret. This world's mysterious laws caused Xiang Mei to have a foreboding feeling the first time she saw it. That was, she felt that the entrance to this world only went one way, and after leaving to enter this world, there was no coming back. Xiang Mei's original plan was to use this world as her escape route. If her contradictions with the Soul Emperor truly rose to an irreconcilable level, then she would simply leave. At that time, Xiang Mei hadn't known of her dark and dire fate, nor did she know what the Soul Emperor was planning to do with her. Although she and the Soul Emperor were like water and fire, that wasn't a good enough reason for her to flee to a different world which she wouldn't be able to return from. But afterwards, Xiang Mei discovered that the entrance to this world was slowly closing. It wouldn't be long before it completely disappeared. Thus, she mentioned this world to someone, and that person was Lin Ming. 12,000 years ago, Lin Ming was at the Holy Lord realm. He had just defeated the Good Fortune Saint's son, and humanity would soon face a great war with the saints. In order to save humanity, Lin Ming ventured out in all directions in search of all possibilities. He even held on to the faintest glimmer of hope that he could come to the soul world to look for Xiang Mei and negotiate with her. If possible, humanity could ally with the Spiritas to deal with a common enemy in the saints. At that time, Xiang Mei already knew the truth that the Soul Emperor was an abyssal. In her eyes, humanity's war with the saints was basically meaningless, and even weak. And as she saw Lin Ming toiling so hard for a race that didn't have any ability to resist the great calamity they were about to suffer, she simply sighed. She sympathized greatly with Lin Ming and even felt pity. Lin Ming asked why Xiang Mei sighed, and her reply was, "Sighing for your destiny." Lin Ming was puzzled. However, Xiang Mei didn't fully explain anything to him. Instead, she simply asked him whether or not he wanted to follow her to some place. They wouldn't go to the divine realm, nor would they go to the soul world. Once they left, they would go for 100 million years. The so-called 100 million years was in truth a lifetime. They would go far away from the great vortex of the great calamity, leaving everything behind so that they could pursue the road of martial arts with all their hearts. At that time, Xiang Mei still had her own ambitions. She hoped that one day she would be able to step beyond divinity and create her own world.
She thought that Lin Ming was a suitable companion as he had enough talent to grow to such heights. If they could cultivate to the peak of martial arts together, then they could imitate the immortal sovereign and his wife from 10 billion years ago, stepping beyond divinity together. Moreover, once they went to that mysterious world that was about to be sealed up, they could rid themselves of the Soul Emperor's control just like that, completing everything in a single swoop. Of course, going to a completely unknown world already meant tremendous risks. These risks didn't come from the original dangers of that world, but whether or not that world was suitable for them to cultivate. But, when Xiang Mei asked Lin Ming, his reply had actually been refusal.
Xiang Mei wasn't surprised.
She believed that her and Lin Ming's fate would end there, and if they met in the future it would only be as enemies. She never thought that all sorts of things would happen between her and Lin Ming in the future, and the two of them would even have a daughter. Life was like a dream, and perhaps fate was already an established road. But for those that continued to look forwards into the future, everything still seemed too inconceivable and incredible. All of these thoughts instantly flashed through Xiang Mei's mind. In the next moment, she instantly sent Fishy a sound transmission.
"We're rushing over. Give everything we have and fly into that world." Chapter 2233, The Soul Emperor Returns. Hearing Xiang Mei shout in her ears, Fishy didn't hesitate. She immediately poured the entirety of her strength into the amethyst origin crystal. Xie. The amethyst origin crystal flared up with a blazing divine light. It flew straight towards that other world. The Soul Emperor's eyes flashed with a cold light. Just now he had been immersed in surprise at the appearance of such a mysterious world. Why would such a strange world be in the dark abyss? But as he saw Xiang Mei about to escape, how could he allow them to do as they wished? Bang! The Soul Emperor's world strength transformed into a giant black hand that grasped towards the amethyst origin crystal. At this time, Xiang Mei was already in desperate straits, recklessly pushing forwards. This was her last chance. To defeat the Soul Emperor in a frontal battle was naturally impossible, and trying to flee from his grasp was also a mission with innumerable difficulties and risks. But, if it were only to fly into a space crack that was 10,000 feet away, that was far easier. Hold! The Soul Emperor's palm thrust outwards. All around him, the demon god's Toon force field tightened up. The black hand grasped onto the amethyst origin crystal. The energy collision caused the amethyst origin crystal to wildly tremble. The impact force that spread through caused Xiang Mei to shake and spit out a mouthful of blood. However, at this moment, she didn't care about this at all. Disregarding all consequences, she overdrew her blood vitality, overdrew her life, and continued to hurtle towards the entrance to that other world. Chi chi chi. The amethyst origin crystal began to spin. Its edges were as sharp as knives as it split open the black hand of world strength created by the Soul Emperor. Although the Soul Emperor's world strength was formidable, the amethyst origin crystal was actually the ultimate nemesis for all forms of energy. At this time, the amethyst origin crystal was cutting through that black hand with unstoppable force. What? The Soul Emperor was shocked. He disregarded his exhaustion and consumed a massive amount of world strength to send a palm reaching out for the amethyst origin crystal, but this attack was still cut apart. It was like the amethyst origin crystal was a heated blade of iron and his attack was a chunk of fat, directly pierced through, impossible to block. Whoosh! The amethyst origin crystal sank into the entrance to that different world. It rapidly flew into the space storms that roiled within and vanished from sight. The Soul Emperor was stunned. He thought that the might of the amethyst origin crystal had slightly exceeded his expectations. 10 billion years ago, the Soul Emperor had fought with the Azura Road Master and had encountered the amethyst origin crystal. At that time, the amethyst origin crystal hadn't seemed too terrifying. Was it possible that in the 10 billion years that the amethyst origin crystal had been the incarnation of the eternal wall, there had been some sort of change to it due to the massive accumulation of energy? Or,
Could it be that 10 billion years ago, when the past life of Xiang Mei sacrificed herself and poured her strength into the amethyst origin crystal, her actions had served as a catalyst to hasten this change? All sorts of theories passed through the Soul Emperor's heart. He could feel that the amethyst origin crystal had likely evolved somehow. If Xiang Mei hid in the amethyst origin crystal and tried to flee with all her might, it would indeed not be easy to keep her here. If it were the Dark Abyss, then he would have a much greater assurance.
But in this different world, the Soul Emperor looked at that gradually shrinking entrance that seemed as if it would soon disappear. He hesitated for a moment and finally chose not to chase after them.
This different world caused the Soul Emperor to feel particularly strange. The space storms within were far fiercer than those in the Dark Abyss, and the entrance seemed as if it would vanish at any time.
Going to this different world would be easy, but to capture Xiang Mei and return safely before the entrance vanished might not be possible. The Soul Emperor estimated that if he wanted to capture Xiang Mei, he would need to expend a considerable amount of effort. If things went smoothly, it would take an hour, and if things didn't go smoothly, then no one knew how long it would take. If he were to enter this different world and the entrance vanished before he captured Xiang Mei, then could he return? The Soul Emperor wasn't confident he could do this. Whether it was the 33 heavens or Dark Abyss, the Soul Emperor was fully confident he could freely wander about as he wished. But to go into a completely different world that had never been discovered before, there were just too many uncertainties involved. He might lose track of the space coordinates in this different world and be unable to find his way back. I never thought that something like this would occur. It seems that the heavens haven't yet abandoned you. The Soul Emperor took a deep breath. Although he was filled with unwillingness, he decided to give up his pursuit of Xiang Mei. The appearance of this different world should have happened because of the shattering the eternal wall. The energy that had accumulated for 10 billion years erupted all at once, piercing through space and making this entrance visible. However, the Soul Emperor thought that this might be Xiang Mei's destiny. If fate truly existed, then with Xiang Mei's destiny her life shouldn't come to an end. In this situation where he had to go to a completely unknown different world to chase down Xiang Mei, who had such a great destiny upon her, this wouldn't be the wise action to take, especially since the Soul Emperor had so many other matters to attend to. Slowly, that giant space fissure that spread out for over 1,000 miles shrank to several miles in length. Then, after a mere 10 breaths of time, it completely vanished. From beginning to end, Xiang Mei and the amethyst origin crystal didn't reappear. The Soul Emperor sensed that after the entrance to this different world was sealed up, it wouldn't be easy for Xiang Mei to return. She might be forever trapped in this different world. Although his heart was filled with simmering resentment, he didn't delay any further. He flew directly into the depths of the Dark Abyss. Besides the Soul Emperor, his other two avatars were still in the Dark Abyss. Now that the Eternal Wall had disappeared after so many years of effort, he had to take advantage of this time to fuse together with the Demon God's tomb and also deal with the nearly collapsed Emperor Bone Sea. With so many matters to deal with, he couldn't afford to delay. Just the Eternal Wall had taken him 3,000 years to deal with. This was equal to allowing Lin Ming to grow for another 3,000 years. In addition to the Soul Emperor's future seclusion, everything might add up to over 10,000 years. The Soul Emperor didn't know what heights Lin Ming had grown to, but he knew that he absolutely could not allow Lin Ming to continue growing. Every year that the Soul Emperor was delayed meant that Lin Ming would grow that much stronger. In the Soul Emperor's mind, the danger that Lin Ming represented was far greater than the Azura Roadmaster and Immortal Sovereign from 10 billion years past. When Azura and Immortal encountered the Soul Emperor, they had already cultivated for countless years. They were existences that could be described as old monsters. Their ages were too great. Even though they were strong, their potential had shrunk to almost nothing. The Soul Emperor wasn't afraid of them because of this. Whether it was Azura or Immortal, the Soul Emperor could allow them to freely cultivate as they wished without any worries. But Lin Ming was different. He had only cultivated for a small number of years. Compared to Azura and Immortal, this time period was simply negligible.
But in such a short period of time he managed to attain a true divinity level cultivation and have strength equal to a peak true divinity master.
Moreover, he still managed to make another breakthrough. He could be said to have reached the limits of true divinity. In just 10,000 some years, with an initial true divinity cultivation, Lin Ming possessed strength at the limits of true divinity. This was something that the Soul Emperor could hardly believe. 10 billion years ago, whether it was Azura or Immortal, neither of them had managed to reach such heights. If the Soul Emperor were to allow such an enemy to freely grow, then this enemy would surely surpass Azura and Immortal in the future, perhaps even surpassing himself. Sooner or later, this enemy would send him to hell. The Soul Emperor naturally had to prevent such things occurring. The Soul Emperor quickly flew deep into the depths of the Dark Abyss. At the same time, in the 17th level of the Dark Abyss, in Deep King Road Demon Palace, a low and sonorous voice reverberated throughout the entire palace. "All elders of Deep King Road, come see me at once." This voice carried with it a great majesty and imposing aura. It rang through the ears of every true divinity level abyssal. As these abyssals of the Dark Abyss heard this voice, they felt the blood quicken in their veins and their hearts begin to race, as if resonating with this sound. Many higher abyssals directly fell to their knees. "We obey." With the summoning of this voice, all true divinity abyssals of Deep King Road hurried deep into the Demon Palace. At this place there was an independent world. This was Deep King Road's Forbidden Land. Without express permission, no one was allowed in. But now this Forbidden Land was opened and the true divinities of Deep King Road began to enter, one after another. The moment they entered this Forbidden Land, they felt a terrifying pressure fall down upon them. All the true divinity level abyssal knelt down. Before them, not too far away, there was a giant demon head. This demon head seemed forged from metal. It floated in the skies, over 1,000 miles large, hanging above like a small star. This demon head was Deep. In front of Deep, these abyssal overlords didn't dare to take a single breath. They absolutely did not dare to look up into Deep's face. They respectfully knelt on the ground, their heads touching the floor as they waited for Deep's orders. Deep was silent. All abyssals awaited his command. And something similar was occurring in the Great Flood Demon Kingdom. In the Great Flood Demon Kingdom's capital city, a 1,000-mile-long lifeform, similar to a python, was perched atop a divine mountain. Its amber pupils flashed with icy light as it stared at the countless abyssals kneeling at the base of the divine mountain. This giant snake had a pair of wings on its back and 4 claws. There was also a single horn jutting from its head. It resembled a flood dragon a little, and was also the true ruler of the Great Flood Demon Kingdom, Flood. The Great Flood Demon Kingdom had existed for 2 billion years already. Very few abyssals ever saw Flood. Most of the time, no one even knew where Flood was. In fact, for the last several 100 million years, Flood seemed to have completely vanished, and some abyssals even suspected that Flood had died. But today Flood had appeared. Moreover, Flood appeared on the Great Flood Demon Kingdom's divine mountain, in the presence of the trillions upon quadrillions of subjects that lived in the capital city. All the abyssals within hundreds of thousands of miles were able to see this scene. Their expressions were filled with excitement and awe. Flood, their heart's demon god, had actually appeared. All abyssals had a premonition that something important was about to occur in the Dark Abyss. Chapter 2234, Divine Conversion Pool. The moment Shang Mei disappeared into this different world, within the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, Lin Ming felt his heart tremble. He could feel his faint connection with Shang Mei weakening. If he didn't carefully try to sense this, it was almost impossible to notice. Moreover, even such a sensation was slowly fading. At this time Lin Ming had already been in seclusion within the Amethyst Heavenly Palace for 3,000 years. But because he had spent 1,500 years within a time enchantment, the truth was that he had been cultivating for 18,000 years already. Before this, Lin Ming had never spent such a long time cultivating in a single period. In fact,
going into seclusion for a long time wouldn't necessarily increase one's strength. Going into seclusion to cultivate was something that never managed to catch up to the speed of actual combat and experiencing the battlefield for oneself. In terms of foundation, the former would never be as solid as the latter. But now with Lin Ming's current level of strength, there was nowhere he could temper himself in the entire 33 heavens. As for actual combat, the only one that Lin Ming could fight was the Soul Emperor, and that would have disastrous results because as things stood, Lin Ming was not a match for him. Thus, going into seclusion to cultivate was Lin Ming's best choice at the moment. In these 18,000 years, Lin Ming first had his 9 revolutions of reincarnations reach perfection. Then he slowly combed through all the laws and cultivation methods he learned in his life. Lin Ming had undergone endless slaughters, but he had never spent such a period like these 18,000 years to slowly sift through his laws and consolidate his foundation. In these 18,000 years, Lin Ming's cultivation system became increasingly mature and sublime. Everything was being carried along a straight path and Lin Ming's strength was also subtly increasing, but now, because the spiritual connection between Lin Ming and Shang Mei vanished, his cultivation was also interrupted. Lin Ming, the Eternal Wall has been torn open. The Azura Road Master sighed. Hearing this, Lin Ming's heart tightened. The Azura Road Master's original speculation was that the Soul Emperor wanted to use Shang Mei to tear down the Eternal Wall, and if the Eternal Wall was now broken, then that meant that Shang Mei. Carefully probing, Lin Ming faintly felt that Shang Mei hadn't died. But for some unknown reason, the connection between the two of them was becoming increasingly faint, so faint that it seemed to completely vanish. I don't know the specifics of what happened, but my connection with the Amethyst Origin crystal has also become faint. The Azura Road Master said, leaving Lin Ming surprised. Lin Ming said, "Could the Amethyst Origin crystal have been refined by the Soul Emperor? I left my spirit mark within it. If the Amethyst Origin crystal was refined by the Soul Emperor, then my spirit mark would be destroyed and I would know of it. But currently, I can faintly feel that my spirit mark hasn't been refined by the Soul Emperor, but has been blocked off by something instead." Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. Blocked off by what? His connection with Shang Mei was also in a similar state. The Soul Emperor didn't seem to have killed Shang Mei, nor did he obtain the Amethyst Origin crystal. Then, what happened to them and why could they not sense them? Lin Ming, worrying about such things is useless. I cannot leave the Azura Road, and no matter how much more you worry, nothing can be done. In order to protect the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe, the Azura Road Master had already fused his body and soul into the two worlds. If it weren't for the Azura Road Master's help, it would be impossible for Lin Ming to defeat the Soul Emperor with his current level of strength. Of course, while Lin Ming and the Azura Road Master couldn't leave, the Soul Emperor also wasn't able to come. There were problems with the world of the Demon God's tomb and the Emperor Bone Sea had nearly collapsed. Deep and Flood were too busy handling this to deal with other matters, and even the Soul Emperor had to race back to the depths of the abyss. In truth, even if the Soul Emperor recklessly came to the Azura Road, it would only be an avatar of his true form that arrived. Then, facing the Azura Road that was controlled by the Azura Road Master, not only would the Soul Emperor be at a disadvantage, but he would also suffer tremendous losses. Junior understands. How could Lin Ming not understand these truths? But worry always clouded the mind with chaos. Lin Ming found it difficult to relax, and besides Shang Mei there was also Immortal Sovereign. Senior Azura, this junior once left the Stone of Eternal Life with Immortal Sovereign. The changes in the Demon God's tomb should be related to Immortal Sovereign, and now that the Eternal Wall has shattered and the Soul Emperor is able to return to the Dark Abyss, then Senior Immortal is. Lin Ming didn't speak any further. He could feel that once the Demon God's tomb master fused his avatars back together, then Immortal was likely to suffer a perilous fate. Hearing Lin Ming mention Immortal, Azura deeply sighed. You told me that Immortal has already died and all that is left over of him is a wisp of remnant soul that has been locked within the Emperor Bone Sea for 10 billion years to experience countless sufferings and tribulations. If he were to leave the Emperor Bone Sea, his soul would disintegrate to dust, but perhaps such an end would be salvation instead. The Azura Road Master and Immortal Sovereign were lifetime rivals, and this was true whether it was in martial arts or in pursuit of love. But at the same time, they were also lifetime friends. To know that Immortal's soul would perish to nothing, even Azura felt his heart grieve with emotion. At this time, rays of light appeared from the void in front of Lin Ming. They blended in with the boundless space all around, racing on without end. Lin Ming seemed to have arrived in the endless starry skies. As he saw this eternal divine light slowly gather together, the sight was like the creation of the universe, the beginning of a new age, a river that flowed through the past and into the future. The divine light slowly condensed.
Then, a person's figure finally appeared, just 1,000 feet away.
This person wore a snow-white robe and the edges of his face were sharp and distinct, filled with dashing heroism. His eyes seemed to contain the life and destruction of universes, and his eyebrows slashed towards his temples like divine swords. This was a majestic and handsome man. But looking closely, one could feel that his appearance was blurred by the countless years of time, making it impossible to see him clearly. Facing this man, Lin Ming inexplicably felt a connection to him. This was a resonance that originated from his bloodline and laws.
Senior Azura? Lin Ming's heart trembled.
Although he had been in communication with the Azura Roadmaster during these years, the Azura Roadmaster had never appeared before him like today. The Azura Roadmaster looked much younger than Lin Ming had imagined. Lin Ming originally thought that while the Azura Roadmaster wouldn't appear old, he would have the looks of a middle-aged man, filled with a calm dignity. But this white-robed figure before him seemed to be around 18 to 19 years of age.
The white-clothed Azura looked at Lin Ming and walked forwards, one step at a time.
As he moved forwards, it was like he was stepping across the river of time, headed from one shore to the other. His clothes were like snow and his features seemed carved from jade. He could simply be called a handsome youth in his prime. This was completely divergent from Lin Ming's original expectations of the Azura Roadmaster. Azura said, "I have already fused together with the Azura Road as one.
What appears before you now is only my incarnation."
Lin Ming, I once passed on to you a single drop of Azura blood, but today I will pass on to you the complete Azura bloodline in order to lay the groundwork for your final fusion of the inner and outer universes. The Azura Road Master waved his hand, and a jade blue pool appeared in front of him. This pool was only 30 to 40 feet wide and 10 feet deep. It was filled with clear blue water, and if Lin Ming were to jump within, the water could cover his head. Lin Ming could feel that this wasn't some ordinary pool, but was likely a spirit treasure. In these past years, Lin Ming had seen countless spirit treasures. The most common ones were swords, sabers, spears, lances, halberds, and other such weapons. There were also the relatively rare seals, furnaces, staves, command signs, and other such unorthodox spirit treasures. But this was the first time Lin Ming had seen a pool-shaped spirit treasure.
This is the Divine Conversion Pool.
Over 10 billion years ago, I reached true divinity in the Divine Conversion Pool, and afterwards, I also stepped beyond divinity here. The Divine Conversion Pool is an ancient spirit treasure that I refined from a divine spring. The waters within have wondrous healing effects, and in your weakest moments it can assist your life source. It is the most suitable place for you to make your breakthrough.
Hearing this, Lin Ming was shocked.
This Divine Conversion Pool was actually the spirit treasure which the Azura Roadmaster had used to make his true divinity and beyond divinity breakthroughs. The Azura Roadmaster was a peerless ruler of the 33 heavens. If he were to make a breakthrough somewhere, even the most ordinary pool would become a divine pool, and this pool itself was refined from a divine pool by the Azura Roadmaster to begin with.
Lin Ming cautiously stepped into the divine pool.
On the edges of it, he could see law tracings engraved by the Great Tao. These should be the remnants of the heavenly Tao laws from when the Azura Roadmaster made his breakthroughs. Without a doubt, these traces were incredibly precious treasures. Just this divine pool itself was enough to make a true divinity-level master go blind with jealousy. If he were to make a breakthrough here, it could be called twice the result with half the effort.
Chapter 2235, World-Destroying Light.
Lin Ming slowly sank to the bottom of the divine pool, feeling the waters gently brush against his body. This feeling was like a mother's touch, each drop of water the most precious celestial nectar. This water entered Lin Ming's body through his nose and mouth, flowing into his meridians and discharging from his 360,000 pores, constantly transforming and renewing his body as it went. At this time, beams of strange blood-red light began to gather from all around. Beneath the control of the Azura Road Master, this light flowed into the pool, causing the entire divine pool to be covered with a faint blood-red glow. The strength within this pool became increasingly rich, so thick that it made one's heart race. At the same time, the Azura Road Master took out a demon bone. This demon bone had been the Soul Emperor's staff, but when the Soul Emperor abducted Shang Mei, he had thrown it towards Lin Ming and didn't have enough time to retrieve it. The material used to forge this demon bone staff was undoubtedly from the true demon god that existed 100 billion years ago.
Now, the Azura Road Master threw it into the divine pool so that Lin Ming could refine it.
Lin Ming, you will reach perfection of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace in the divine pool, and after that you will completely refine the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe. The Azura Road Master's voice suddenly turned murky and somber.
Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. He looked up and saw that on the edges of the divine pool, as the Azura bloodline was being poured in, the strength of the Azura Road Master's incarnation was actually weakening. Lin Ming could even see that in the Azura Road Master's originally pitch-black hair, several strands of snow-white hair appeared. Lin Ming's heart shook. Was this because the Azura Road Master was giving him the strength of his bloodline? Senior Azura, you.
As Lin Ming spoke, the number of threads of white hair on the Azura Road Master's head began to increase at a visible speed. Lin Ming couldn't sit still upon seeing this and directly stood up from the divine pond. At this time, the bloodline strength within the pool was incredibly rich, but Lin Ming was left stunned. The Azura Road Master calmly said, "Lin Ming, there is no need for you to worry about me. Senior, my training has just begun and might need to continue for 10,000 years.
Will you be continually weakening throughout?"
Lin Ming could feel the Azura Road Master's strength gradually fading away. He suddenly remembered that the Azura Road Master had already merged into one with the Azura Road.
Then, if he were to refine the Azura Road, then wouldn't that mean the Azura Road Master's strength would be affected? Wouldn't he become increasingly weak?
The Azura Road Master shook his head. For these years I have been deeply slumbering within the Azura Road, using every method at my disposal to prolong my life. Even so, I do not have much time remaining. I have lived for far too long. In more than 10 billion years, I went from possessing nothing at all to slowly growing and leaving my mark, from a holy lord to world king to Empyrean, and to true divinity. I became an overlord in my own right and even stood upon the highest peak of the 33 heavens. In my life, I have experienced and possessed everything. But 10 billion years ago I witnessed the great calamity with my own eyes. I watched as my allies, my disciples, and even a woman that I loved deeply above all but did not choose me, slowly die, one after another. The only one who remained was me, and I have been shouldering all of this, continuing until the present. Slowly, I have become jaded to everything, all that I see is pale. I no longer chase after that eternal life I was obsessed with, and if I have any desire then it is to finish what I didn't finish in the past. As the Azura Road Master spoke, he seemed to become several points older. But his eyes remained as bright as stars. Looking at the Azura Road Master, Lin Ming felt an indescribable grieving in his heart. Although I have weakened, I won't completely exhaust myself. It's only that my abilities to protect the Azura Road will become increasingly weak, thus you must complete your training as soon as possible before the Soul Emperor catches up to you. As the Azura Road Master spoke, his expression remained serene throughout.
Lin Ming clenched his fists.
He could feel just how heavy the burden was that the Azura Road Master carried on his shoulders, but saying anything now was meaningless. What he needed to do was completely refine the Azura Road and Akashic Dream Universe.
But plans never went as smoothly as one wished for.
Another 2,000 years passed. Within the divine conversion pool, as Lin Ming reached the critical moment in his training, from the vast skies, a black pillar of light abruptly appeared and came smashing down. This divine light was like a giant black dragon. It passed through a space channel, howling as it fell. It was terrifying, possessing a formidable pressure that caused the blood vitality of all Empyreans in several hundred miles to tumble about, making it impossible for them to look directly at it. This was like a world-destroying light that could annihilate all of existence. It shot straight towards the amethyst heavenly palace where Lin Ming was.
Lin Ming. Your Majesty, human sovereign. Senior Lin Ming.
From the three great races, numerous martial artists saw this scene and cried out in alarm. But there were also many of these people that couldn't even respond in time. This world-destroying light was far too fast.
This is bad.
Divine Dream stared helplessly on as this destructive strength poured onto the amethyst heavenly palace. They were simply powerless to stop it. It was beyond formidable, a power that surpassed the limits of those present.
Deep in seclusion, Lin Ming was in a state where he couldn't be disturbed. How could he possibly withstand such a strike? Could this be an attack from the demon god's tomb master? This thought flashed through Divine Dream's mind. But in this critical situation, as everything hung by a thread, a giant purple hand rose up from the amethyst heavenly palace and struck out at the world-destroying light. This hand was 1,000 miles wide. It blocked out the skies, capable of grasping a star. Bang!
The world-destroying divine light exploded within the purple hand.
Terrifying shockwaves swelled out in all directions, ruining great tracts of blue skies.
That heaven-covering hand had forcefully blocked the world-destroying divine light.
This sudden change left everyone stunned, speechless, and dumbfounded.
Then soon figured out what had happened. This world-destroying light was likely the attack of the demon god's tomb master.
The demon god's tomb master had come? Could it be that he had already completed his seclusion? Everyone felt their hearts tighten. If the demon god's tomb master truly arrived at this moment, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Don't panic.
That old demon hasn't come, he is only making an attack across spacetime. Divine Dream's voice echoed out for thousands of miles, calming the minds of the nervous martial artists.
The demon god's tomb master still needed a long period of seclusion.
He had been heavily wounded in that great battle 5,000 years ago, and with all the problems that had occurred in the demon god's tomb, how could he recover so quickly?
Moreover, he also had to refine the demon god's tomb.
Since the Azura Road Master dared to allow Lin Ming to go into this final closed-door seclusion at this time, then he must have some degree of assurance. Otherwise, it was equal to allow Lin Ming to freely come under attack.
That old demon hasn't come?
He didn't come himself, yet he was able to make such a dreadful attack through multiple realms of space. That was too horrifying. As the martial artists thought of the might behind that world-destroying light, all of them felt a lingering fear in their minds. If they were sucked into that light, then they would have disintegrated into ashes.
The demon god's tomb master is truly fierce, but Senior Azura is also exceptionally strong.
That heaven blocking head must have been formed by Senior Azura. Without even moving, he was already able to block that horrifying black light. How amazing!
That's right, he's amazing. Ha ha ha.
Many martial artists recalled that giant heaven-blocking hand and felt much more cheerful. They knew that the Azura Road Master was guiding Lin Ming in the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, and with the protection of the Azura Road Master, it wouldn't be easy for the Demon God's Tomb Master to disturb them with long-range attacks. However, as Divine Dream heard these martial artists proudly speak of the Azura Road Master, a dark cloud of gloom covered her face.
That world-destroying light, was it really blocked so easily? She anxiously looked towards the Amethyst Heavenly Palace. She had a dark foreboding premonition that this attack was only the opening act. How could the Demon God's Tomb Master freely allow Lin Ming to complete his seclusion and reach heights where he could pose a threat to him? Everyone, listen to me. Do not depend on Senior Azura sheltering you.
To survive this calamity, we must depend on ourselves.
Hurry up and begin cultivating again.
A delicate and dignified voice called out. The one who spoke was Soaring Feather God King. She floated high in the skies, her white dress floating about her.
5,000 years in the time enchantment was equal to 50,000 years outside.
With Inconclear's guidance, Soaring Feather God King had broken through to the next boundary and reached the middle true divinity realm.
Moreover, her strength was decent even amongst middle true divinities. In this alone, she was far stronger than Astral Vault God King.
Astral Vault God King was mired in the lower true divinity realm and hadn't been able to make his breakthrough yet.
Soaring Feather's thoughts were similar to Divine Dream's.
This sort of attack would likely continue onwards.
The Azura Road Master could block the first, but could he block everyone after? Chapter 2236, In the Face of Catastrophe.
Within the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, the Azura Road Master's incarnation sat before the divine pool, his complexion slightly pale. Compared to 2,000 years ago, a tremendous change had already occurred within him. His face was still bright and as beautiful as jade, and he was still filled with a daring heroic spirit, but his head of black hair had turned silver.
The Azura Road Master's eyes remained as vibrant as before.
Even though he had helped Lin Ming refine the two highest laws, and even though the Demon God's Tomb Master's attack had consumed his blood vitality just now, his expression was still one of pure serenity. Senior Azura, Lin Ming could feel that the Azura Road Master had been injured in the brief collision with the Demon God's Tomb Master just now. Originally, cultivation here already forced the Azura Road Master to expend a tremendous amount of energy. Now, in order to resist the attack of the Demon God's Tomb Master, the pressure placed on him could be imagined.
Do not be distracted.
The greatest help you can offer me right now is to single-mindedly complete the refinement as soon as possible. If you can finish 100 years earlier, then that is 100 fewer years of pressure that I must face. I hope that when you finish your cultivation, your boundary will be equal to mine.
Lin Ming's heart skipped a beat. My boundary will be equal to Senior's?
The Azura Road Master's boundary was naturally that of beyond divinity. But Lin Ming thought that even if he were to seclude himself for another 10,000 years, then although his strength would greatly increase, wanting to step beyond divinity was actually unlikely. Even with another potential 10,000 years added on, Lin Ming would only have cultivated for around 40,000 years. But, compared to those martial artists that had lived for hundreds of millions of years, 40,000 years was nothing at all. The Azura Road Master said, in terms of cultivation, you are a bit worse. But when it comes to the boundary and laws, you actually surpass me. The so-called beyond divinity is in truth not some orthodox boundary. In the road of martial arts, every legitimate great boundary is divided into smaller realms, early, middle, late, peak, but beyond divinity does not possess these. This is because beyond divinity is not a large boundary at all, but a state of being, such as totem-level abyssals that have reached the limits of true divinity. When a martial artist comprehends their own perfect system of laws, the state he achieves is called beyond divinity.
Beyond divinity.
That is when one's cultivation reaches the peak and one's laws reach the peak, and these two dual peaks cannot be surpassed. This is the highest realm of martial arts. The Azura Road Master's words were gentle, but what he said left Lin Ming shocked. This was the first time Lin Ming had heard someone describe the beyond divinity realm.
Junior understands.
Within the divine conversion pool, Lin Ming deeply bowed to the Azura Road Master. He also understood that beyond divinity martial artists were still divided into varying degrees of strength. Who was weaker and who was stronger, all depended on how strong a martial artist had been before they stepped beyond divinity and also the heights of their laws. Though his cultivation hadn't reached the peak of true divinity, none of that mattered. At the early true divinity realm he was able to compare to a peak true divinity already. 10,000 years from now, if his cultivation rose to the upper true divinity realm and his laws reached perfection, then he might be able to defeat the Demon God's Tomb Master.
Divine Dream and Soaring Feather's speculations hadn't been wrong. That world-destroying light was only the beginning of the nightmare. 2,000 years later, the divine light reappeared. Moreover, this time it wasn't just one, but two together. Two beams of divine light fell from the clouds like two pillars that held up the heavens. They crashed down onto the amethyst heavenly palace. From within the amethyst heavenly palace, the heaven-blocking hand appeared once more and brutally collided with those beams of light. For a time, the earth shook and mountains rocked. The Azura Sea sagged down from the horrifying pressure, forming a giant hollow water bowl 1,000 miles deep. All the clouds above the Azura Sea were blown away by the shockwaves. Looking at this apocalyptic scene before them, the martial artists of the 33 heavens were bewildered. If this continues, what can we do? The last attack had also been blocked by the Azura Roadmaster. They didn't know how difficult it had been for the Azura Roadmaster to block that world-destroying light, but this time it seemed that it wasn't easy for the Azura Roadmaster. After these two beams of divine light blasted down, the hand created by the Azura Roadmaster was forcefully torn apart. Some energy even poured down from the seams of the palm and fell onto the amethyst heavenly palace like waterfalls. Luckily, the amethyst heavenly palace was protected by array formations, so that energy was eventually unable to reach it. The situation is worsening. Divine Dream frowned. There was an attack after 2,000 years, and it seemed as if the enemy's strength was increasing. This meant two things. The first was that the demon god's tomb master was in seclusion and couldn't leave the demon god's tomb, nor could he freely launch attacks as he wished. He could only take advantage of small breaks or use excess energy to attack Lin Ming. And the second was that as time passed, the demon god's tomb master was constantly growing stronger. But in the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, the Azura Road Master would clearly not grow stronger, he might even weaken with time. If so, then the situation would only deteriorate from here on out. Whether it was Divine Dream or the high-level figures of humanity and the saints, all of them were nervous. There was no way they could block that black divine light. Moreover, that divine light directly passed through space and was equal to instantly transferring to the area above the Amethyst Heavenly Palace. Wanting to intercept it midway was impossible. Another 2,000 years passed. And sure enough, the world-destroying light appeared once more. Two beams of divine light fell down again. Everyone held their breath as they saw this. No one had any idea whether or not the Azura Roadmaster would form that heaven-blocking hand once more to resist the attack. But suddenly, from above the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, a white light shot out. An ancient white altar appeared, welcoming the world-destroying light. This stone altar was 100,000 feet tall and divided into 33 levels. This was the spirit treasure that the Azura Roadmaster had refined himself and placed into the final trial's 7th level, the Divine Seal Altar. 3.6 billion years ago, Empyrean Divine Seal had once imitated the Divine Seal Altar to refine his own magic tool. This was where Empyrean Divine Seal's name had come from. The two world-destroying lights recklessly fell down upon the Divine Seal Altar. Bang! The Divine Seal Altar wildly shook. Tumultuous waves rose up in the Azura Sea. Terrifying tsunamis soared 1,000 miles into the skies, piercing into the heavens. These 1,000-mile-high tsunamis could be called a calamity, but at this time the common people of the Azura Road had already been evacuated. Thus, no matter how those giant tsunamis crashed into the earth, it still didn't create a scene where massive numbers of lives were cut down. I wonder how much longer Lin Ming's seclusion needs. Xiao Moxian held her hands together, looking towards the direction of the Amethyst Heavenly Palace with a heavy heart. Lin Huang gently took hold of Xiao Moxian's hand. He knew that this world-destroying divine light was only the overture to the arrival of the true war. Chapter 2237, Tearing Apart the Azura Road. The ancient Azura Road fell into an unprecedented crisis. The attacks from the demon god's tomb master were as accurate as a calendar, appearing once every 2,000 years. The martial artists of the 33 heavens knew that when Lin Ming entered his second seclusion, he had said to them that this seclusion would last for about 10,000 years. It could be expected that in these 10,000 years, the demon god's tomb master's attacks would continue to descend upon them. Moreover, it seemed that every attack was stronger than the last.
Perhaps when the end of the 10,000 years appeared, the might of the demon god's tomb master's attacks would reach new heights.
Just what would that scene be like? The martial artists of the 33 heavens didn't dare to imagine. And at the 800-year period, the fifth continuous attack arrived as expected. The dark night of the Azura Road was illuminated with bright light, making it seem as if it were daytime. A blood-red glow basked the entire world. The heavens and earth were pierced through.
It was like a peerless vicious beast was awakening within this divine light. It was like a sun that was billions of miles wide fell into the Azura Sea.
The powerful shockwaves shoved apart the Azura Sea to unimaginable depths, revealing the rocky seabed. The divine seal altar was struck flying away, and the protective array formations around the Amethyst Heavenly Palace were torn apart by divine light. The entire Amethyst Heavenly Palace began to wildly rock in the violent tsunamis. Lin Ming.
10,000 miles away, Divine Dream, Xiao Maxian, Lin Huang, and the others all saw the strike and felt their hearts tighten. Facing the strength of the demon god's tomb master, all of them were simply incapable of resisting. If they were drawn into these shockwaves, they would be heavily wounded or even killed. In these past years, the martial artists of the 33 heavens had progressed a great deal. But when compared to the demon god's tomb master, it was simply unworthy of mention.
Father!
Lin Huang gripped his fists, his nails digging into his flesh and blood. Facing this calamity, he was far too weak, but in truth his cultivation was actually at the peak of the martial artists of the 33 heavens. From the time that Lin Ming went into seclusion, coupled with the time enchantment, the martial artists of the 33 heavens had practiced for over 50,000 years. But Lin Huang had trained for an even longer period of time. He had been continuously cultivating for 70,000 years already. In these 70,000 years, Lin Huang frequently fought with the masters of the 33 heavens. At the start he fought with older Empyrean masters like Skyren Godlord, and then started fighting those like Astral Vault God King. After that he fought with Soaring Feather God King and Emperor Sakya. After Joer grew up, he even fought with her. Finally, Lin Huang even trained with Empyrean Divine Dream. Lin Huang's cultivation had already reached the middle true divinity realm. Not just him, but Xiao Maxian, Soaring Feather God King, and Emperor Sakya also broke into the middle true divinity realm. Dragon Fong, June Blue Moon, Hang Chi, Fairy Blue Lotus, Dark Demon Monarch, as well as the primal god races Daiwahen, Lan Exayan, and the celestial races Tabague, and many others also broke into the lower true divinity realm. Because the Azura Road had released all the resources it had accumulated for 10 billion years, and also because the various ancient influences of the three great races had unconditionally opened all of their inheritances, the strength of the martial artists of the 33 heavens had reached an unprecedented peak that hadn't been achieved since 10 billion years ago. But in front of the demon god's tomb master, all of this was useless. The disparity was simply too great.
Rumble, rumble, rumble.
Shockwaves from the world-destroying light flew into the horizon, and the massive sea waves began to fall back down. The martial artists of the 33 heavens looked at the weakened array formation around the Amethyst Heavenly Palace and felt their hearts shiver. It had been a long time since they gathered near the Amethyst Heavenly Palace to cultivate. With Ink and Clear's management, they had formed a new time enchantment that was a good distance away from the Amethyst Heavenly Palace. This was a relatively safer place to cultivate.
After all, Empyrean martial artists and those below an Empyrean couldn't withstand such terrifying shockwaves.
Lin Ming's seclusion had yet to end.
After 2,000 more years, another horrifying attack was likely to arrive. What would that be like? No one dared to imagine that scenario. Time passed, year after year.
The martial artists of the 33 heavens desperately cultivated with all their hearts. They felt a foreboding premonition that a great storm was coming, and this final moment would also be the last war that decided the fate of the 33 heavens. Even though those that gathered in the Azura Sea were the unparalleled overlords of their various races, they still felt a deep and sincere fear. What would come would eventually come. it was impossible to hide from. Moreover, everything that occurred would happen earlier than expected. 10,000 years hadn't yet passed. On the 9,900th year, the demon god's tomb master's sixth attack arrived without warning. The titanic beam of divine light seemed to fall down from the river of stars in the highest heavens. It broke through the skies of the Azura Road, drowning out the dazzling sun in the skies. All that was left over was the blinding fiery divine light that covered all. The entire Azura Road began to burn. On the long and linear Azura Road, the Azura Sea was located at the very terminal end of this strip. But beneath the divine light that seemed to fall like a river of stars, the end of the Azura Road where the Azura Sea was located was forcibly cut apart. Destructive light swallowed everything and all sounds disappeared from the world. 100,000 miles away, the martial artists of the 33 heavens stared helplessly on as the Azura Road was torn apart. The endless seawater no longer exploded in giant tsunamis but was instead sucked into the void where it vanished from sight. And the amethyst heavenly palace was also enveloped in this divine light. Its protective array formations resisted for only a brief moment before breaking apart. The light of the array formations shot outward. Without the protection of the array formations, the entire amethyst heavenly palace was forced to withstand the direct impact of this divine light.
Lin Ming. Human Sovereign, Your Majesty.
Many martial artists of the 33 heavens were so worried that they started to rush over.
Lin Ming was their final hope, but if he were to be directly struck by this divine light while in seclusion, would he simply disintegrate to nothing? The energy of the divine light was too strong. Even the amethyst heavenly palace that was carefully refined by the Azura Road Master was mostly melted away. Within the amethyst heavenly palace, Lin Ming bled from all over his head. And this blood was not red but black. Just as his blood flowed out, it was charred by the horrifying flows of heat. His road of fusing heaven and man had reached its final moments. But at this last step, the demon god's tomb master was doing his best to not allow Lin Ming to walk to the end of this road. Senior Azura.
Lin Ming cried out to the Azura Road Master in his heart. He knew that in this strike just now, it was the Azura Road Master that had helped him keep off the majority of it, otherwise he would have already perished. The Azura Road Master had consumed an enormous amount of energy in these years. His body grew increasingly weak and he was even now forced to help block this strike. How could Lin Ming not be worried?
Senior Azura, you do not divert your heart.
I should still have some energy left remaining. Within the darkness, the Azura Road Master's voice echoed out. It was already incomparably weak. Hearing this voice, Lin Ming felt his heart shiver. He clearly felt that the strike just now had wounded the Azura Road Master's source of life.
Senior Azura.
Lin Ming was at a loss for words. Anything he said right now would be useless and pale. But at this time, he could feel a terrifying divine might surging in the skies above.
Lin Ming's face blanched. The attack hadn't ended. This time, the demon god's tomb master didn't attack just once, but twice. That old freak, he's going all out.
The Azura Road Master's voice was frail and powerless.
His figure moved around in the darkness.
10,000 years ago he had appeared young and filled with great vigor and majesty, but now he had a head of white hair and his appearance was wrinkled and withered, like an old man on the verge of death. Although his body was old, the Azura Road Master's eyes still remained as bright and pure as a spring lake. He clearly realized that Lin Ming was in the final moments of his seclusion. The demon god's tomb master was doing everything in his power to stop this and destroy Lin Ming.
Damn it all, if only I had another month, no. 20 days, if I only had 20 days.
Lin Ming clenched his fists together, his eyes turning blood red with rage. His nails dug deep into the flesh of his palm. He could already speculate what had happened. When the Soul Emperor lay hidden in the Soul World for all those past years, although he hadn't been able to do anything to the Akashic Dream universe, he had still managed to leave behind some contingencies within. The Soul Emperor could likely sense what he was doing and also feel that he was in the final stages of his fusion of heaven and man. In 9900 years, Lin Ming had already accelerated his speed of refinement. This was to avoid the demon god's Tomb Master's desperate counterattack. But he had still misjudged. The demon god's Tomb Master's final attack had also come earlier, just a month before his seclusion was due to come to an end. It was impossible that this was a coincidence. The only possible reason was that the demon god's Tomb Master had managed to somehow probe his situation using some methods. The energy brewing in the skies grew increasingly strong. Around the already shattered Amethyst Heavenly Palace, the martial artists of the 33 heavens that were rushing forwards were panic-stricken. They all revolved their movement techniques and began drawing backwards. It was impossible for them to share the burden of this attack with Lin Ming. It was too terrifying. It's weakened by over half. That old demon doesn't have much excess strength remaining. In the shattered Amethyst Hall, the Azura Road Master looked up into the skies. To forcibly send out a second attack, this was surely an enormous burden to the demon god's Tomb Master, who was still in seclusion. When a martial artist was in seclusion, the ultimate taboo was for their training to be interrupted. Even though the demon god's Tomb Master had transcendent methods, he would still be restricted in his actions. As the second attack came crashing down, the Azura Road Master's body turned into a flow of light that fused into the shattered Amethyst Heavenly Palace around him, propping up one final shield. Ah! Outside the Amethyst Heavenly Palace, many martial artists cried out in alarm. They watched blankly on as the broken Amethyst Heavenly Palace completely blew apart underneath the conflagration of divine light. The fragments of the Amethyst Heavenly Palace mixed in with the storm and scattered in all directions. Lin Ming! No! Xiao Moxian looked at this occur from a distance, feeling like her heart had been stabbed by a saber. Chapter 2238, Invasion of the Abyss. The Amethyst Heavenly Palace was gone. Lin Ming's original place of seclusion had been completely destroyed. Within the terrifying storm that spanned the heavens and earth, everyone could vaguely make out a person's figure. This figure was charred black, like a piece of dead wood struck by lightning. Lin Ming! Father! Xiao Moxian and Lin Huang were intimately related to Lin Ming and were able to instantly recognize that this charred figure was him. As they saw the pitiful condition that Lin Ming was in, Xiao Moxian's heart wrenched and every martial artist of the 33 heavens held their breath. It's over. His Majesty Human Sovereign's seclusion has been broken. Must the heavens destroy my human race? Is today the end for us saints? In that moment, the overlords of the three races all felt despair surge in their hearts. They hadn't even fought and yet they had been defeated? They had put forth so much effort in the last several tens of thousands of years, and yet they didn't even have the qualifications to fight? Father hasn't died, Zhou said. She could feel fluctuations of energy coming from Lin Ming. Zhou had experienced Lin Ming's baptism of laws when he broke into true divinity, and in terms of energy resonance she was even closer than Lin Huang. It's good that he hasn't died. The primal god race's Daiwahan suddenly said. Although it sounded good to say that Lin Ming hadn't died, no one was able to relax in this situation. From Lin Ming's horrible condition it was likely he had suffered some severe wound. And it had to be known that Lin Ming was currently in seclusion and he was also in his most crucial period, the final stretch to break into the realm beyond divinity. How could such a period of seclusion accommodate an attack like this? Seeing Lin Ming's charred body and severely wounded appearance, the situation was absolutely awful. This was an attack from the demon god's Tomb Master. In the situation, if Lin Ming's cultivation was broken midway, could he still complete his seclusion? Or would the demon god's Tomb Master's attack ruin everything and cause Lin Ming to fail? If this was really the result, then the 33 heavens was done for. Everything was finished. Even if Lin Ming could still continue his seclusion, his injuries might ruin his plans of completing his cultivation in 10,000 years. To the current 33 heavens, time was life. If Lin Ming were to leave seclusion after the Soul Emperor, then the end result was the same as Lin Ming's seclusion being interrupted midway. The 33 heavens would still be destroyed and all native races sentenced to extinction. Everyone had placed their hopes on Lin Ming, but as they saw his current state, their mood could be imagined. At this time, space began to twist all around Lin Ming. A massive amount of world strength gathered, forming into a force field around him. This force field enveloped him and began to slowly sink back into the destroyed Azura Sea, vanishing from sight within the vortex that continued to swallow everything. His Majesty Human Sovereign has gone to recover his wounds, a young, newly promoted human Empyrean said with a heavy heart. If he wants to continue cultivating, he certainly must restore his wounds, but His Majesty the Human Sovereign still requires time to heal his wounds, and it will take more time than before his seclusion was interrupted.
If this continues, a spirit true divinity side.
He didn't finish speaking, but everyone understood the meaning behind his words. Stop spouting such discouraging words.
If the human sovereign has not yet died, then that means we still have hope. Everyone, take a brief break and continue your training.
The one who spoke was Soaring Feather God King. As the current top figure and leader of the saints, Soaring Feather had an extremely high level of prestige. In the 33 heavens she even neared Divine Dream in fame. But now, even Soaring Feather called Lin Ming the human sovereign. This was because Lin Ming was the ultimate leader of the 33 heavens, and in public it was reasonable for her to refer to him with his title. After stopping everyone's panicked discussions, Soaring Feather continued to say, "The human sovereign has already resisted attacks at 2,000 years, 4,000 years, 6,000 years, 8,000 years, and 10,000 years.
Even if there is another attack after 12,000 years and 14,000 years, how do you know that the human sovereign cannot withstand it?
Perhaps there have been more miracles that have happened to him than the rest of us combined." What Soaring Feather said was the truth.
It wasn't an exaggeration to say that there were far too many miracles occurring around Lin Ming.
As long as Lin Ming was able to withstand this attack and take that final step beyond divinity, then the entire situation would be reversed. And according to the last two attacks of the demon god's tomb master, the second attack was far weaker than the first. He had clearly overdrawn himself to make such an attack. In other words, the demon god's tomb master might stop his attacks for the next several thousand years. If so, then the 33 heavens had a glimmer of hope. As everyone was thinking this, a bolt of black lightning broke out from 10,000 miles above their heads. This black lightning was like the sword of a spiritual god, forcefully severing the vault of the heavens in two.
What happened? It's not over.
All the overlords of the various races raised their vigilance once more. They looked up into the skies where the heavens had been divided in half by that black lightning. At that place, there was a giant black hole. The black hole exuded an incomparably evil aura, and black flames spat out from the edges, wildly dancing around it like giant pythons.
That is Space Channel. The overlords of the 33 heavens were all highly experienced and knowledgeable individuals.
They quickly recognized that the black hole which appeared in the skies was not some attack used by a top master, but a space channel.
This space channel is too big.
The true divinities of the three races were all stunned. The space channel began to recklessly proliferate outwards until it occupied half the
skies. This feeling was as if a black universe had appeared out of thin air and was forcefully merging together with the Azura Road. And what followed left the hearts of all martial artists quaking. From that great black world, black figures began to appear. Dense and endless, an inexhaustible number, it looked like a swarm of locusts flying in from afar. That is abyssals.
In these years, the martial artists of the 33 heavens naturally learned of the abyssal demons and also saw what they look like.
These countless dense waves of dark figures were abyssals.
The eternal wall had long since been destroyed and the abyssals had been uncaged. They could invade the 33 heavens at any moment. The reason they patiently bided their time was not to give the races of the 33 heavens a chance to catch their breath. Rather, it was because the Azura Road was protected by the Azura Roadmaster and it was meaningless to attack the 33 heavens. But now, the Demon God's Tomb Master seemed to have calculated that the Azura Roadmaster was helping Lin Ming in the final stages of his seclusion, and because of this his strength had plummeted to its weakest point. When the Demon God's Tomb Master had attacked, he had destroyed the Amethyst Heavenly Palace and simultaneously pierced through the great defensive array formation laid down by the Azura Roadmaster. Like this, even if the Demon God's Tomb Master couldn't attack again, he could still send in the Abyssals to destroy Lin Ming. This was the fully gathered strength of the many Empyrean and True Divinity Abyssals. The curtains to the Great War of Calamity had been opened. Chapter 2239, 4 Demon Kings. Looking at the endless flood of Abyssals, the martial artists of the 33 heavens all felt a tingle creep across their scalps. A great number of powerful influences had gathered in the Azura Road in these past years. But if compared to the Dark Abyss, then they were worse by one level, whether it was in the overall quantity or quality of masters. The strength of the Abyssals wasn't something that the 33 heavens could compare with. Even though Ink and Clear had released all the accumulated inheritances of the Azura Road in these last 10,000 years and forcefully increased the strength of the 33 heavens, the disparity with the Dark Abyss was just far too great. What do we do? A newly promoted Saint Race True Divinity worriedly said. When facing the Abyssal legions, no one was able to maintain their calm. This was the bloodthirsty and cruel Abyssal race, a race that would even eat them alive. There is no escape route for us. We can only bet our lives on this final battle. Soaring Feather God King's eyes lit up with a flaming fighting intent. She was well aware that what awaited them today might be total annihilation, but so what? If the 33 heavens were swallowed by the Dark Abyss, it would mean death, and if fighting meant death too, then they might as well heroically die upon the sandy battlefield. Protect Lin Ming at all costs. No matter what happens, he is our final hope. Divine Dream said. In truth, many people were aware that with the invasion of the Dark Abyss, it would be impossible for them to be protected by Lin Ming here. And when Lin Ming entered his second period of seclusion, he would need at least 10,000 years. Now, there was still 100 years left remaining, and Lin Ming had also been wounded by the Demon God's Tomb Master. His training might be influenced and Lin Ming himself still might be severely wounded. To rely on Lin Ming emerging from seclusion to rescue them was impossible. It doesn't matter. Lin Ming has already protected us so many times, and this time it should be us who protects him. I have already been bitterly cultivating in the time enchantment for 50,000 years. All of my efforts were to prepare for this battle. Let's fight to the death. Killing one is enough, killing two is a gain. Facing the demon army of the Dark Abyss, the martial artists of the 33 heavens didn't feel dispirited at all. Instead, on the border of death, many of them were filled with bravery. Since they had no road to escape, they might as well risk their lives in this one final battle. What fearless and stupid people! A hoarse voice echoed out. Amongst the demon army of the Dark Abyss, an old abyssal covered with black scales coldly sneered. The years are heartless and there is no race capable of withstanding the passing of time. The lot of you have already occupied the resource-rich 33 heavens long enough, it's about time for you to let it go. This old abyssal was the imperial scholar of the Great Flood Demon Kingdom. His cultivation was at the peak of the upper True Divinity realm and he was the top figure besides Flood. The higher abyssals of the Great Flood Demon Kingdom had been led by him to wage war against the 33 heavens. You are right. There is no race able to withstand the passing of years, and you abyssals are also the same. You have existed for far too long already. It's time for you all to enter the grave where you belong. A cold voice sounded out. Divine Dream floated high in the air, her white clothes wafting about her as she stood in harsh contention with the Imperial Scholar. Within the time enchantment, Divine Dream was the first and only master of the 33 heavens to break into upper True Divinity. This was also because Ink and Clear had recklessly poured resources into her so that her cultivation could increase as fast as possible. While this would create problems with the stability of her foundation, Divine Dream didn't have the scruples to care about such things with the present situation.
Ha ha! Our abyssal race is different. Even the great shattering of the universe 100 billion years ago wasn't able to destroy us.
Since we managed to withstand the Heavenly Tao's wishes to erase us from existence, then we should replace the Heavenly Tao as the rulers of this universe. The 33 heavens belong to our abyssal race, and from this day on we will become the sole supreme rulers of the world.
You have already lost this battle.
Hand over Lin Ming and recognize my abyssal race as your lord and master, and we might forgive you and allow you your lives. Another old abyssal spoke up. He was Deep King Road sovereign and also possessed a peak upper true divinity level cultivation. Usually, he was the voice of Deep in the dark abyss and also conveyed Deep's commands. When the dragon is in the shallows, the shrimps think they can come to bully. If Lin Ming were in his peak state, your so-called great demon army would be nothing more than packs of dogs and chickens.
However many came would die.
Xiao Moxian hatefully said on the side of the 33 heavens.
A pack of dogs and chickens? Don't you think your worship of him is too ridiculous? No matter how strong he is, he still hasn't stepped beyond divinity, nor will he have the chance to. When the demon god attacked, he was severely wounded, and I wouldn't even be surprised if he has already died. Are you still hoping that he can leave seclusion to save you? How laughable! Another low and deep voice sounded out from the side of the abyssals. This was the third upper true divinity abyssal. He was part of the Demon Association and was their highest elder. The Demon Association's totem level abyssal had died a long time ago, but the Demon Association still managed to stand tall, and a great deal of that was related to the existence of this highest elder. The Demon Association has a great grudge against Lin Ming. By this time, the abyssals had already learned that the Lin Ming who was deep in seclusion was the ancient Aeon sect's ninth elder who had stirred up so much chaos in the Dark Abyss. In the Dark Abyss, many demon lords and demon kings had been played with by this human race junior that had pretended to be a higher abyssal. Moreover, they even believed that Lin Ming was a new genius that had appeared in the Dark Abyss and might even be a future totem-level abyssal that ruled the Dark Abyss. To be played around with and fooled in such a manner, how could they not be angry?
Ink and Clear stepped forwards, facing the two upper true divinity level abyssals of the Demon Association and Deep King Road. In a great war, the difference in the number of highest level forces was extremely important. If each upper true divinity were to match up against an upper true divinity, then the fight could be dragged on for a long time.
But if there was an upper true divinity that didn't have an
opponent, then they would be free to deal with the lower level martial artists.
If that occurred, it would be a slaughter.
I can see that the 33 heavens has a considerable number of masters.
A high-level abyssal cackled.
At this time, the Dark Abyss had poured forth with their full strength. Besides the upper true divinities of the 6 great totem-level sects, there was also an upper true divinity that didn't belong to any sect. And at this time, he also stepped forwards. As for the 33 heavens, they only had a single upper true divinity in Divine Dream. With Ink and Clear, there were 3 of them. Lin Huang clenched his teeth. He wanted to step forwards, but Xiao Moxian grabbed onto him.
I will go with you.
Upon reaching the true divinity realm, even Lin Huang would find it hard to jump ranks to fight. But if Xiao Moxian were to help him, they could deal with it.
However, if they were to join together to deal with an upper true divinity, that would make it so that the 33 heavens wouldn't have enough masters to deal with the Dark Abyss's middle true divinities. The result would still be a slaughter. But at this time, in the distant skies, a sparkle appeared. A white-clothed figure came hurtling forwards, its speed bewildering. Xiao Moxian was stunned. She focused her eyes and was overjoyed by what she saw. The one arriving here was Mo Eversnow.
Through the many years of parting, Xiao Moxian had no idea where Mo Eversnow had gone.
But she now appeared in their darkest hour, ready to lend them a helping hand. Chapter 2240, The Disparity in Strength. Before the demon army of billions, Mo Eversnow stood alone.
Her white clothes were untainted like fresh snow as she proudly stared down the abyssals. Her gaze was cold and sharp. She grasped a deep blue sword, killing intent flooding out from her eyes. You, the Demon Association's highest elder, narrowed his eyes as he looked at Mo Eversnow. When he looked at her, he had a sense of déjà vu, as if he had encountered her before. Who are you? The Demon Association's highest elder asked. But as he did, he saw another group of martial artists rapidly flying in from behind her. Although they were far away, the Demon Association's highest elder soon recognized them. They were people of the ancient races, and these ancient race martial artists also had a faint aura of the dark abyss. The Demon Association's highest elder narrowed his eyes. As he recalled the familiar feeling when he saw Mo Eversnow, he suddenly smiled. I was wondering who it was. So it's the dying embers of the Yellow Scarf Bandits. I thought it was strange when you all disappeared 15,000 years ago, but it turns out you were hiding in the 33 heavens. In the past, Mo Eversnow had started a slave uprising in the Dark Abyss, and their main enemy was the Demon Association. However, the scale of this rebel army had never been able to enter the eyes of the Demon Association's highest elder. You bunch of ants. Since you want to die, then you can all die here together. The subordinates that Mo Eversnow brought were basically all once slaves of the Dark Abyss. No matter how diligently these people trained, it would be impossible for them to reach the true divinity realm. Facing the army of the Dark Abyss, they couldn't play much of a role at all. But the one leading them, Mo Eversnow, actually caused the Demon Association's highest elder to feel a level of dread. Mo Eversnow's cultivation was only a slight bit away from reaching the upper true divinity realm. But the aura she gave off indicated that she was no weaker than a genuine upper true divinity. This degree of strength was already amazing. In the past, when Lin Ming entered the Dark Abyss for the first time and encountered Mo Eversnow, her cultivation had been between an Empyrean and true divinity. At that time, she was able to help Lin Ming make the killing blow against a true divinity elder of the Demon Association. Now, after so many years past, although the strength she obtained seemed a tad exaggerated, it was still within acceptable bounds. Heavenly Empress Shenqing used to be an extreme Empyrean master, and whether it was Heavenly Empress Shenqing or Mo Eversnow herself, they both had incredibly high levels of talent. There really are so many people that want to die. Since all of you are so obstinate, then you can all go to hell together today. The abyssal true divinities all moved towards the front of the demon army. There were over 60 true divinities. 15,000 years ago, the Dark Abyss actually had over 100 true divinities. Over 20 true divinity level abyssals had died in the venture into the demon god's tomb, leaving 90-some true divinities left over in the Dark Abyss. The abyssals didn't know the secrets of the demon god's tomb, nor did they know how 20-some true divinity abyssals died. But even if they knew, it would be useless because they had no other choice. They all had to obey the orders of the demon god's tomb master. In the past, the demon god's tomb master quietly killed off some true divinity level abyssals in order to repair the nearly collapsed Emperor Bone Sea. The Spiritus true divinities and Empyreans that were brought over to the Dark Abyss were also killed off by the demon god's tomb master, all of them turned into nourishment for the demon god's tomb. Now, the Dark Abyss only had 60-some true divinity level abyssals remaining, and all of them had been sent out by the demon god's tomb master. Although the number of true divinities in the Dark Abyss had plummeted, it still wasn't a number that the 33 heavens could compare with. The Azura Road Master had fully released all the destiny and resources that had accumulated in the Azura Road for the last 10 billion years. But, the majority had been used for Lin Ming and there wasn't much remaining. It was already pushing the limits to train another dozen-some true divinities, and these people included Dragon Fang, June Bluemoon, Xiao Maoxian, Lin Huang, Jor, and some others. These were people who, if they originally cultivated as they did, would have almost been able to break into true divinity already. Moreover, besides these people, there was also Dark Demon Monarch, Daiwahen, and a few others. Although they broke into true divinity, they weren't too strong. They were just at the early true divinity realm, and when compared to those old abyssals who had broken into the true divinity realm hundreds of millions of years ago, the disparity was apparent to all. There were a dozen some newly promoted true divinities as well as the original 7 or 8 true divinities of the 33 heavens. Then, there was Ink and Clear as well as Divine Mist who had seized the body of the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Altogether, the 33 heavens had around 27 to 28 true divinities. They couldn't even reach half of the Dark Abyss's numbers. The 33 heavens had less than half the number of true divinities, and the difference in Empyreans was even greater. In the past, because of the Great War between the saints and humanity, a great number of Empyreans had died. When the Spiritas were added in, the 33 heavens only had a fourth of the Empyreans that the Dark Abyss did. The disparity in strength was massive.
Although an Empyrean didn't have any power to resist a true divinity, if several thousands and hundreds of them were to join together in a great battle formation, their combat strength could not be underestimated.
In this sort of situation, if the 33 heavens were to battle the Dark Abyss, the result could be imagined.
Kill them all. Trample flat the 33 heavens.
The first ones to attack were the dozen-some middle true divinities in the front lines. Their blood boiled and their killing intent surged to the heavens. Once they attacked, they were merciless.
Dazzling demonic lights smashed out like landslides and tsunamis.
On the side of the 33 heavens, no one was willing to show any weakness. Ink, Clear, Mo Eversnow, Divine Dream, Lin Huang, Xiao Moxian, and the others all attacked together.
Divine law lights sizzled through the heavens. The waters of the Azura Sea swirled into the air, turned into divine dragons that danced in the skies. This was the first exchange and was limited to the middle true divinity realm martial artists and above. This collision was like a brief battle of commanders when two armies faced each other. Although it seemed like just a probing strike, the truth was that it was incredibly significant and related to the morale of both sides. Whether it was the Dark Abyss or 33 heavens, every true divinity gave their all. Energy beams wildly shot outwards. Some were deep red like blood, some were as brilliant as suns, and some shined with the divine light of laws, weaving back and forth like silver pythons formed from lightning. In this frenzied battle, the 33 heavens continued to occupy the disadvantage. But Mo Eversnow, Xiao Moxian, Divine Dream, Divine Mist, and the others all grit their teeth and persisted. At this time, none of them could weaken their momentum. In fact, the smallest gap between the 33 heavens and the Dark Abyss lay in their high-level war strengths. The 33 heavens had no lack of geniuses. The Great Flood Demon Kingdom's imperial scholar sneered. He waved his hand and more true divinity abyssals joined the fray. With 60-some true divinity abyssals against a mere 27 to 28, this giant difference in numbers simply couldn't be made up for. Let's fight. On the side of the 33 heavens, all true divinities moved to battle. Monstrous waves rose up from the Azura Sea. Two giant beasts emerged from the waters. They were the true divinity-level vicious beasts that guarded the Azura Sea, and at this time they also contributed their own strength. But, the disparity was still there, it was unable to be bridged. After the countless energy storms from the first barrage of attacks collapsed and faded away, the Dark Abyss's true divinity abyssals simply hadn't consumed much energy. However, the true divinities of the 33 heavens all had ugly looks on their faces. There were even some new early true divinities who had yet to consolidate their strength that had blood flowing from the corners of their lips. The first exchange was already like this. If the battle were to continue, the ending could be imagined.